Hello all and welcome to the 7th Apex Legends Knightsarena Carnage Cup Finals. Tenrek and Mellocrate here to take you through the second day of action. After watching 40 teams take each other on over a 12-game extravaganza, we've narrowed it down to our final 20 to compete for a $10,000 prize pool. Mello, feels good to be back. Feels good to see these teams in the lobby. Feels good to cast some Apex. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, and yeah, for anyone who missed those games yesterday, it was quite a treat. But I'm looking forward to even better games today, where we are down to just 6. They're going to be some very hard-fought 6 games. I expect that the teams that were really crushing it yesterday are now going to have even more difficult rivals, even more trials and tribulations that they're going to have to fight through to get to the top of the mark. And of course, prize money on the line today. I just really can't wait to get into these games, Tenrek.
Yeah, that $4,000 to first place, $3K to second, $1,200 to third, $1,000 to fourth, and $800 to fifth. So a lot to play for, more than normal in Carnage Cups. So you might see these teams get a little scrappier as the day goes on. But in case you missed day one, we'll go over it very quickly. We had two 20-team lobbies to start out the day, each playing 6 games, 3 on Stormpoint, 3 on World's Edge. Exact same points as ALGS, same with placement, same with KP, and it was very, very exciting, very, very fun. Couple teams definitely showing their stuff a little more than others, but that's okay. They were just playing to qualify this time. This day, you play to win. No match point format. It's just those 6 games, just the points you make off those 6 games, and the top 5 teams will get a piece of that prize pool. We got to see a lot of what I think we'll see today, a lot of how the meta's developed with this new patch, a lot of how teams have changed their pathing, a couple of the circles that we can expect to run into today. We got a great look at what's to come, which is the best of these teams, which to also expand on that, are not just some North American professional teams like you may have seen on the banners. You know, there's a lot more clout involved than that. A couple EU Pro League teams, a couple of Challenger Circuit teams from North America and EU, and even some FENB representation, not just in the semis, but today as well.
Yeah, we have an amazing amount of variety, and that is something that is truly wonderful about the Carnage Cup, especially off the back of a brand new patch, and as we are quickly approaching the Mannheim land as well as that LCQ. So this is a stellar look at maybe, as you were mentioning, what this meta could end up developing into, as well as what teams are finding their place very quickly, being able to adapt very effectively, and which teams not so much. Of course, I think the talk of the town for our previous lobbies is definitely going to be Alliance, fresh off of a huge LAN win here. Looks like there is no stopping that squad whatsoever, completely running over the lobbies, not actually finding any wins, but they were in pretty much every single end game that we got to see. So incredibly impressive, but of course a number of other teams that were showing up in a big way. We got 5-star even in this lobby over here, lobby B. We had Weave and Furia also showing up. So I mean, the caliber of teams certainly cannot be denied. And yeah, these games are going to be very interesting, because now that we've sort of sorted everyone out to the top of the pile, it's going to be teams that are maybe a little bit more familiar with each other, and just in general teams that have already spent a little bit, and in some cases a lot of time already in these international scrimmages. So I think today might be the sort of the premier opportunity for us to see just how these teams expect to play over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. So many different fields of experience coalesce into today. And the way that you did play did to an extent affect how you come into today. That would be seeding. We did a snake draft yesterday with a random seeding for teams. So in Lobby A, I think it was NRG that got the first seed. That was a random draw. And then Lobby B, Meet 2, who is no longer here today, got that draw. Today, seeding was based off of the point point totals you got in those lobbies, and it is no longer snake draft. So Alliance both got picks number 1 and 21 going into today, followed up by Furia, then Weave, then SSG, and so on and so forth, down the standings of the previous lobbies, which, to expand upon that, that means that Falcons did not get an early draft, something that they're not necessarily used to. And that also means that some of the lower level teams that we don't see in PL that actually did show out yesterday, like Weave, like KCP, or not KCP, like 5-Star, and like Temper, they got some really good POI drops that we'll get to get a deeper look at when we jump into this map. But no contests, which means everyone is going to be able to loot up before they shoot up. And for good reason. In World's Edge, the most figured out map in the game, you need that extra time. That's where we'll be heading first, second, and third today. Storm Point games 4, 5, and 6. Short little intermission in between, but we're going to be going through today fast. These players are ready, so ready that we're about to hop into this first lobby. World's Edge, game 1 of the Carnage Cup Finals. $10,000 on the line. 20 teams fighting for it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I think we're also just as ready to just start flying through these games. I do want to touch a little bit on the fact that our snake draft is a little different here. I think previously in tournaments where there's some sort of seeding advantage, a lot of times it's somewhere between 10 to 15 points tops if you're, in that first place spot. I think here we're going to see, I think, quite a bit more impact because that draft is going to carry through all 6 games. You're not just getting a slight advantage if you were at the front of the pack. So Alliance already with an incredible showing yesterday, getting first pick, first sort of dibs on the better POIs that they expect to perform from the best. They looked pretty unstoppable yesterday. I can certainly expect to see at least a similar performance, if not in this case a much better one today.
Yeah, unstoppable is definitely the right word for it. They really just got to fight whoever they wanted and won, assessing that perimeter and getting rid of any stragglers just about every time. Someone who is, I think, the raw opposite of that yesterday was Weewoo, one of the, I think might be the only FENB team remaining in this lobby as well, but they had a stellar performance in Lobby B yesterday, not just with their positioning, not just with placement points, but because they took fights so efficiently to the point where other teams just didn't want to continue fighting them. They got such an early advantage, did such early great chip damage from that distance play that they continuously used on their meta comp, which we see them rocking today. That they really didn't have to worry about much else. Teams didn't really step up to them, especially after they lost their opening pick. And from there, they got to take very advantageous positions. I think got second in 2 separate games, along with a decent amount of KP. And it's all with this really awesome sub-in. Maxine is back, but J-Trips hopped in with the team yesterday. A big T2 legend from NA Apex that made a big impact on the team as well. So they've been one of the most exciting teams to watch.
Fragging Power was awesome to witness yesterday. I hope they carry it over to today, even though they've once again swapped up the roster a little bit. But taking a look at our map, we are actually going down to the southeast. So it looks like we're not getting triple skyhook zones today. Nice little bit of a change of pace. But of course, you see they're right near the dead center. Falcons, a team that we need to keep our eyes on, right? That is just a team that won't ever cease to be a favorite as long as they are in the lobby, getting their POI, I believe, entirely to themselves. No contest. They did have a contest in their lobby yesterday up against Most Hated. So now getting their preferred POI all to their lonesome with Zone pulling their way could be a pretty huge start for the Falcons if they, kind of just execute the game plan that they're just incredibly excellent at. There is no denying the ability of that squad. I think it's just all about getting it done today.
Yeah, when you're talking about IQ in the game, I don't think even Alliance holds a candle to Falcons. They're 3 of the smartest minds in the game. There is absolutely zero denying that. DSG, a team that notably made a couple shifts, and Designful's actually in today. Yesterday they had an additional sub with, I believe it was Nano, but QZer and Enemy are now joined with the full squad today, and it looks like they took some shots at, I believe that was Go Next for a moment, but they'll continue their looting before heading back out of launch site, which I believe they'll want to change their position relatively soon, despite the fact that they're in this circle, just because this isn't super optimal, and with Designful on that path, they want to look for the next thing every single time.
Yeah, and DSG rocking no control characters here means that they're going to be flying a little bit blind in terms of where they want to approach this next zone from, but I think they're certainly in a spot that gives them some flexibility in the zone, sitting towards the south. Once they wait for this next zone to pop, and they can kind of see where the rest of the teams are starting to move in, they might be able to make a slightly more informed decision, though. If you know anything about this, guys, they are more than happy to take those fights right there, more than happy to engage. I think rocking this Pathfinder is going to open up a little bit of that fighting option for them as well, whereas some other teams might be focusing more on that Crypto Watson that we've been seeing all over these team compositions and all over the lobby. So we'll see what this ends up looking like in terms of ring pulls. They might get a chance here to even find a bit of a third party, as Falcons has already found maybe a couple of enemies that they can start taking shots at.
It looks like they're setting up for just one fight to take, but they want to make sure that they have the easy snake into it. Being in such an already heavily contested location, they want to be precise with it. They want to stay surgical. In Epicenter, you don't have that problem, though, as it's just Temper and Moist for miles. And so Moist can make as much noise as they want. Another team that performed exceptionally well yesterday. Very consistent top placements, and why else? They have 3 of the best players in the game. Temper also had a stellar performance last lobby, but they do not stand a chance against the team today. Moist going to be able to take it with 2 standing. Walty gets up pretty quick, and they'll be on their merry way.
And I think this is a moment where we start to get a little bit comfortable for a couple of moments, waiting for these teams to start to make this first rotate in. I expect a lot of respect to be shown. I think initially, these teams are very familiar with each other at this point over the course of many, many years of playing against each other, as well as most recently just jamming scrims all freaking day, man. It's been a serious grind for these squads. So yeah, we're gonna get a little bit of a lull here, but thankfully we are plenty comfortable waiting for these fights to break out in our brand new Blacklight chairs. Shout out to Blacklight, one of the sponsors of this event, bringing us some incredible Apex Legends to watch. And yeah, we'll be chilling just for a little while, though. It seems not too long, as some damage being put onto Vanity, a team that did have a pretty decent showing, had a couple of close attempts at some end games, not quite finding the mark in terms of a game win, though it looked pretty close in that last game for Lobby B. So they'll be bringing it back today a little bit more, I think, well adjusted after seeing the way that some of the other teams played in the lobby. Excited to see what this team can do.
They've made their way through here before us.
Looks like they'll play with that level of patience we saw from the other teams. You can already see the dollar signs in everyone's eyes compared to yesterday. These teams know what's at stake today. Clearly, they do see something. They're probably right, I'll say. But I think it's Falcons that they see, unfortunately. So they may want to pretend like they're still inactive. So that we can also finish the ad read, because Blacklight really did come through with these chairs and the prize pool. And they're coming through with a chair for you guys, too. Giving away 1 free Blacklight chair to a viewer of the stream. If you're in Twitch, it's the pin message in the chat. If you're on YouTube, you can go to pks.gg/BL_survey. That's pks.gg/BL_survey. And you can win a free Blacklight chair, just like the ones that Mello and I are sitting in very comfortably all day today. Again, big thanks to Blacklight for helping us out.
Taking a look finally as this ring starts to really clump all of our teams together. I actually really like that spot that Vanity's taken. It looks like they're putting their bets on this zone, pulling right down to those houses where Falcons is already hanging out. Probably a pretty good bet, but they're going to have to hold this spot up against the likes of Bleed, who've already gotten aggressive. First knock being found onto Alberlelli. Gold res, though, might be coming through for them, so they will be able to recover and maybe even up this fight a little bit. Looks like no full aggression being pressed, or maybe a little bit of a delay from Bleed, and that actually could cost them. Drop has, in fact, been dropped, and now on the front foot is Vanity, getting 2 and thirsting both. Great spot for Vanity to be in right now.
Tough cycling, and Knock just not present at the scene of the crime. Vanity makes themselves known with a perfect frontline. Bleed a little too greedy against the party starters, and for good reason, because there is a lot of space being controlled by this, and Bleed may have felt like there was more action going on in the background. Maybe they felt that Vanity could have split their attention and Noct was not as required, but nah. Vanity could pay every ounce of attention they needed to these 2 members of Bleed, cut them down, and get a little more KP added on. go next after being a couple corner huggers, unfortunately, today after teams seem to have outpaced them. Will finally drop an 18th as well, but DSG, the ones that finished them, are certainly not in a safe position themselves, as Most Hated has been watching the whole thing and now is privy to their new location, which is just about in next circle.
Yeah, and unfortunately for them, I think the zone has pulled in a direction that's going to be a bit difficult to manage considering the teams that are in front of you. We've got Falcons on the low ground. Bleed was even victims to a fight just outside this ring, and in fact will fall in 17th place for their trouble. So DSG now has to think about this pathing, has to think about how they're going to sneak into this next zone with so many teams already really taking and establishing these very defensible spots. In the meanwhile, though, multiple teams still fighting for a safe spot of their own over towards Mod. Looks like we might have as many as all 6 players up, all 6 players engaged in a 3v3 right now. Looks like no big advantage opened up quite yet, but I doubt this coexist will last much longer here.
Certainly not. With such aggressive teams like these, Weave has been really on yesterday, and they managed to be able to cede a lot of high grounds very quickly, but Thuggets were quite good at holding their own, and so expect them to not move until moved themselves. But when forced to, they can also pop out for sure. We will take the back seat at the end of the day, letting Thuggets also exit Mod and head a little closer to the Siphon so that they can reposition and grab maybe a little more consistent space. Question is for Weave, do you head down to Stacks where there's 5+ teams waiting and risk a building that you can control for yourself for late circle pull, or do you hold on to all this open mod space and hope that you can just path your way to a top 10? Because again, these circles are strict, these teams are playing carefully. NRG can no longer though and will fall in 16th.
Yeah, Not Moist now, and triple red shields to start off this game. Not too shabby whatsoever. Yeah. And this positioning that they've found themselves in is going to help them out quite a bit in terms of transitioning to that next zone. You can see they're in the top left. You can already see the pings. You can already see what fight they might be planning to take on next. That is going to be, I believe, Vanity, that was last holding that spot, was able to take down Bleed, who tried to siege it. Not Moist, I think, a little bit better kitted, certainly in the shield department here, to take a 3v3 there. Vanity probably has had an opportunity to rack up some Evo of their own, but with the fighting prowess on Not Moist, you gotta wonder if it's really even going to matter. The defensive setup is going to have to do a lot of work against the likes of Not Moist.
Yeah. But you see that gap behind him. I mean, Vanity only really has one way to pay attention to, thanks to SSG and DSG taking down Alliance. Oopsie. Q0 is downstairs. Hello? Well, Designful's fighting and landing shots. Longbow intact. Couple shields not. This is Most Hated that they're fighting up against. The two teams on this edge. They'll get monitored by SSG, but I doubt third-partied. That'll come later. But just pot shots at the moment. No reason for Most Hated to aggress. They can actually snake around the southern end of this. They don't even have to commit to this fight. And with DSG already on the move, it seems they don't even have to make that decision for themselves. DSG gonna head a little bit more south into the next circle. Very early pull, very early building, and again, a lot of space that they get to call their own. But SSG, as they're heading down from Siphon, they have their own spots that they're eyeing, and one of them is certainly that, Not Moist. Now engaging in their own fight upon Vanity. They knew they had to fight this at some point, and they will. Walty will fall first, but that wasn't the fuse. That's Gilderson's, and that's where all the damage is coming from, including that Ring of Fire. EMP to instant aggress as well. But now Timmy and Guild, in fact, have to play for the distance with all this noise that's being made. In fact, DSG are sending a scout over to see what all the hullabaloo is about. They're close enough. QZ are getting a good sight line to this 2v, I believe, 2 that's going on. But so many nades inside this one building, and no pylon to protect yourself. An attempted frontline from Guild will once again fail. It comes down to Timmy. He's just gonna immediately respawn Waltzy. It becomes a proxy 4v3 after a thirst. And Timmy trying to hide out to make sure that this goes smoothly. But what a way for Moist to recover from a fight that I guess technically isn't even done yet.
Yeah, there is really no spot for them to run, though, in this zone. They're hoping that this crevice over towards the left gives them just enough respite to be able to put this reset into place. It looks like they are going to do that, and damage might have been done there. Only see 2 name tags for the side of Vanity? No, all three still up, in fact. So it looks like they were able to hold. At some point in the middle of that fight, they were able to reestablish that pylon. So even though these grenades were flying in, it wasn't quite enough damage to really make a dent. But it doesn't matter. DSG realized the weakness in Vanity's hold after being assaulted. And in fact, they're the ones to take them down. That's going to be Vanity wiped off the map, and now DSG on the bridge.
That's such clean timing from DSG, just swooping in when the shields are down and now taking the most powerful position on the map for themselves. Just beautifully done. But only 2 members are up here right now. Designful, I think, is still on the... Oh, no, it's that would be Enemy still on the way, but he's going to hold on to that crypto drone and this additional space that they rotated off of to get into circle, because Not Moist is on the way back, and DSG, they do want that potential collateral to hold on to if they don't want to keep on these tracks forever. Those remnants of Moist would love to find this space back, or maybe a kill along the way. Timmy looking for something to call his own. But everybody's going to vacate, everybody's going to head towards circle, which is pulled drastically south towards those stacks where those 6, 7, now definitely more teams have been sitting for quite some time now.
I'm wondering if Weave is still holding this spot. We saw them poking at it earlier, and yeah, you can see it's Timmy. Spider Sense is certainly tingling right now. They've managed to walk up, though, and the timing here was impeccable. They managed to slide in right when Weave had decided to make their leave. That is wild. So they have the banner here from Guild. There is one more res beacon just outside this next zone that they could potentially stick them on and get up all 3 members after what looked like dire straits in that fight against Vanity. There's still one more squad they have to worry about. DSG still, I think, in the mix, and neither squad even in zone quite yet.
Okay, Weave has finally made his way in. This is the moment that Timmy gets it done, and they should have time. And now that Weave is inside this building, it doesn't matter that they make noise. They can't step back out. 2R1C would be the closest responder, but even they're a little tied up at the moment. In fact, just about everybody is. We're starting to see too many cooks spoiling the broth. At some point, someone's got to get ejected. And it's Weave first. Losing the fight against Empire. They cannot breach the building. So Not Moist will be the next potential victims for them. But they have all 3 members now, thanks to that res.
And that could open up that space completely for Not Moist. Still not a whole lot of room to play. You can see there just a sliver of an eggshell left to play for themselves, but that's not too shabby, and there's not a lot of teams that are really pressuring them right now. Would be a bit of a nightmare if there was another Fuse squad left on the map, but I think they might have been one of the few that was running that composition here. Maybe Falcons, but Falcons already finds themselves a little bit deeper into the zone. In fact, almost dead center in this next zone, and now the crowding is starting to become a real problem for the teams up north. Not Moist, Empire, 2R1C, even 5-star and Furia are still not safe into this next zone. 11 squads left. Empire not even going to make it there, not even going to get to try, as we are down to 11.
Moist doing what Weave could not, and getting inside the building, calling it their own, and grabbing 3 KP in the process. But like you said, they're one of the teams that have the farthest path to go. We're still on the southern end of the stacks here, where everyone's still adjusting. Falcons seemingly spotting 2R1C. Maybe starting to take some pot shots in this building, but a couple levels to it, so they can play it a little bit slowed down. KCP, one of the consistently strongest teams we saw over in Group B, looking for a more consistent area, but with Deeds down, they can't set up that bunker until he's rezzed, and the Ordnance is paying too much attention to him. Now the team itself, it's too much fighting for KCP to bear, and they'll have to just take it on. This is most hated on that ground level, but they can't fully commit either. They'll have to head back to their building. And KCP, they have all of these little nooks and crevices between these buildings that they get to call home, to the point where they're able to smoke out the death box, grab this banner, and almost get out. But Vosky gets caught by I'm Madness. Fury has been watching on high that death box this whole time. The team that opened up their group by winning the first 2 games on Storm Point and managed to keep that first place position in their group the entirety of the rest of the lobby. Now hold on to a building very convincingly, despite the fact that 2 or 3 other squads occupy it.
And this brawling really took the attention away from this other edge of the map. So Not Moist now does actually have a relatively defensible spot to play, and if they keep playing quiet, really no need to even poke out. They've had triple red shields for a while now. There isn't really anything else they need to do, but it looks like they're going to opt to be proactive here. They find a gap, and this is the beauty of having that crypto available, right? You're able to find your next spot remotely without even having to worry about peeking out and eating up that damage. And look at that, perfect walk up. punished a little bit, eating some shield damage, but no problem whatsoever. That Phoenix kit is going to be popped, and Not Moist now joining the rest of the teams in this building while Falcons gets eliminated.
This is Rats on the bottom, and yeah, Falcons are going to get finished off here. It looks like they were a little too, unfortunately, late or indecisive, one or the other, to the right building to go to. Not Moist still holding their own, and like you said, that was a beautiful walk-up, just trading out a bat for it. That's really impressive. Most Hated will fall to DSG, who are not done fighting just yet. They're still paying attention to 5-star, but they're a little spread thin on the southern end of the circle. 5-star are packed in, though, and they have the high ground pretty convincingly, too. It's just enemy left, and he's just got to W-key his way forward. The shield dancing is solid, but there's just too many personnel to deal with. Just barely done. And it's 5-star that now has control of this entire building, able to revive everybody. And what a fun roster that is as well. Good to see Frex and Zenile back together again. In the meanwhile, though, other buildings still very much contested. In fact, the only building that isn't is the one 5-star is holding on to. They may have just guaranteed a top 3, top 2, even first place position here in game number 1.
Still 7 up, and yeah, there's been quite a bit of space for teams to coexist, but that's quickly about to run out. Really only one building that is left safe, as you had just mentioned. We'll see how SSG is able to navigate this one, putting down the Rolling Thunder to maybe take some threats off of the high ground. Thugget's going to be eliminated. We are down to 6, and there we see the fuse all starting to fly. Probably new castle walls waiting to be put down. You can actually see Furia has almost entirely recovered from what seemed like dire straits just a little bit ago after having taken out members of KCP. SSG fully on the back foot. No transition here made cleanly for them, and they are down to just Koi.
They're still trying to skate this close to everybody, but 2R1C has a couple other things on their plate. Namely, it's Weewoo, who has made their way up to the side of this building. And again, just speaks to how long they're able to last, how able they are to just stay away from any danger that actually means something to them. They continue to do that. They are not the center of attention just yet. Furia still is after being able to beat Thuggets. They're sitting on this lower ground, and now they've seeded potentially the best position. Weewoo taking the bottom floor. Maxine stuck with him a little bit, and there's the first of several EMPs to get procced in this final circle while Not Moist tries to maintain this high ground. The bunkers seem just too strong, though. Everybody playing the long game. Final 6 in one of the smallest circles we've seen yet. How the hell are 11 people still up? They're not for long. Weewoo first, then 5-star next. It's a low ground massacre from Not Moist. Gilderson sits on high and gets to do so much damage before falling. Is it enough to win out for Not Moist? Just barely. Are you kidding me? Gildersons gets away with everything.
Look at the HP left on Waltzy. A sliver of a sliver. That is the margin that we are playing along in this Carnage Cup final. Not Moist off of the high ground, able to clean that one up. Perfect shift into the zone, just finding the right spot to just wait, and somehow they're the final team on that top perch, and they just had to sit and wait for the rest of the teams to eat each other up so that they could claim the prize. But my goodness, it was literally, I mean, you could have blown on Waltzy a little bit too hard and he would have just flown away. That's absurd. I wonder how much of that was done by the zone as well. Great way to clutch it up though, and man, if that is the margin that we're playing in game number 1, I can't imagine how the rest of these games are about to go.
It really speaks to the power of altitude in this game. The fortitude of Moist on the high ground somehow beat the impeccable proactivity of Furia on the low ground. Stepping out early to beat Thuggets so that they can maintain that corner was the perfect move. They literally did it perfectly. And then the massacre happened, and then that fight happened. Of course, Furia's not playing for first. They're playing for that position. They're playing for the longevity. But the idea, the ability to stay up on that rafter as Gildersons, despite how many other players are forced to drop down. I mean, you saw Weewoo was forced to drop down. Furia got forced to drop down early on. That was, I believe, SSG. I think Koi wanted to stay up a little bit longer, but had to drop down too. 2R1C was already downstairs. Just the ability to stay up. Waltzy was down. Waltzy was gone. Gildersons was the. I'm so. That's it's. I think what happens was Guild died and Storm on the tick, and so to show that someone was still standing, the game brought Waltzy back up. But man, what a performance from them, and it shows. 30 points to kick this. I mean, how many KP did Guild just farm in the end there? That was ridiculous.
And you gotta wonder how differently this endgame could have looked if they weren't able to live out that attack that they attempted on Vanity that went horribly wrong. You got to remember, up on that bridge, they were down to just one member, and a hot swap into a drone into an insta-res was how they came back into this game. From there, they brought it all the way back to a 30-point banger to start things off. Look at the lead that they've already established. For some teams, that's a solid game in and of itself, that gap between first and second. My goodness, Not Moist starting off hot.
6,300 damage dealt by this team in one game. Are you Gilderson's got 10 kills. That was one of the best single game performances I have seen from, I'll just say, that team in I don't know how long. But man, you really got to see the staying power of every single one of those members. Like you said, Walty's ability to just frontline like an absolute demon, Timmy's positioning skill, and recovery from there. I mean, that's what the man is there for, right? And then, of course, Guild is Guild. I cannot believe that worked, bro. I cannot believe it. Man, what a game one.
Yeah, it was clean. It was such a great fighting team. You got to give them that respect. I mean, when they're walking into maybe ring 2 or 3 with triple red shields, you got to know something's going right for them. So no surprise to see him there. But again, it's a game of inches, right? It's a game of small microcosms that are leading to these big wins. Gotta shout out the fact that they were almost out of the bridge. Gotta shout out that Weave actually almost gate kept them, and the fact that they transitioned into their spot just a second later than maybe they intended to, because Timmy realized we should play this one a little bit slow. Maybe there's someone up on this hill. Maybe our game is over. Who knows? It turned out not to be the case. We're able to recover and bounce back for a colossal dub. Truthfully, I don't know if we're going to see a game that is this one-sided for the rest of the series, because that's a hard mark to beat.
Yeah, I mean, the second closest, SSG at 13 points right now. There are half the lobby doesn't even have a point yet. Like, this is such a ridiculous way to start things off. We're practically having a 5-game match at this point with how much Not Moist was able to do across that entire game. But yeah, I mean, trying to talk about other teams who did make an impact. DSG ending up with 8 kills that game as well. Very, very impressive in their own right. I think Qzier has really stepped up to the plate lately. His mid-range fights are like perfect, especially when with the way that it's called with Design and Enemy. They just take fights so well. I'd love to see them take some more this next game, which we're about to head into. I'm telling you, these gamers, they're ready to play.
Yeah, it was a beautiful game to watch, and we also have to shout out Weibo, who's already finding themselves in an early end game. Again, with these sort of end zones, this definitely happens a little bit in some of the skyhook zones as well, where you have a ton of buildings, and it can almost feel like a bit of a coin flip. If you're one of the teams that's early there, you're pretty safe into that top 12, top 10, maybe even top 8 range. But what happens from there is a whole other ball game. So if this pulls slightly different, if maybe they take a slightly different fight, they could be the ones in the top 3. So already putting up a decent performance, did have some points for themselves as well to start things off. But one team that I have to shout out, going out in 9th place, which is not where we expect them to see, the Falcons, off of a relatively favorable POI for that zone in particular. Pretty decent POI that they got to work for themselves in terms of loot, in terms of rotation capacity. Not quite finding any real success in that game.
I agree. It's funny. Stormpoint is so well known to be Falcons' map, and yet yesterday it wasn't. World's Edge is really where Falcons outperformed, and were actually able to make that top 10. They were very questionably in the top 10 beforehand, but their consistent performance on this map yesterday was actually what netted them the win. And a lot of it did come from the contest on Siphon that they were able to compound into really good positioning. But like you said, they were early to the party. They had a great amount of space to control for themselves, and they just couldn't hold on to it. That's not what you expect from Falcons. 5 more games to get into this top 5 and get, I don't know, what, 1/10,000th of one of these players' salaries from the prize pool? I don't know, man. I don't know how much these guys get paid. But they deserve... I mean, I think the viewers deserve to see what, how good Falcons truly is, because we all know how good this team is. It's just a matter of time before we really get to see it.
Yeah, and I love that we got to highlight where Not Moist is actually dropping. You can see their top right, which means that they had to migrate all the way down south to make that win happen. But you got to imagine there was quite a bit of fighting on the way with how much Evo they already have. And I think to no surprise, the teams around them aren't necessarily going to be the teams that we're putting on top in terms of their ability to take 3v3s. I think Weave, certainly a competent team. Thugget's certainly a competent team. Donut Shop, I think a team that is a little bit more comfortable making fast rotations and playing for the rotates more so than taking those fights on edge. So running into the likes of a team like Not Moist, it can certainly be a little bit difficult. So not entirely surprising that they were able to farm up quite a bit of Evo early. But now it looks like we're going to get a bit of a flip on this script as we are going up to the northeast, right where Not Moist starts. And you can see from the rotation that Thugget's has already kicked off. It looks like we're going clear that direction for the rest of the game. So eyes on all of the squads up on the top right that are going to have a little bit of zone priority, because this is going to be a zone that is much different, much less forgiving if you're there a little bit later, because the power spots feel a lot more oppressive.
I love the uncertainty of this circle, because you don't know how much open space you're going to get. You don't know if it's going to pull epicenter and you're just going to have to play full altitude, or if you're going to go to climatizer and you're going to have to settle for like just a choke up on a corner. It's really fun seeing how these teams are going to have to flowchart. Very, very touch and go this circle is, and it'll lead to some teams in throes of chaos. The map is in throes of chaos to an extent. It's almost been split in half. The eastern side and the western side have almost divvied themselves up in their rotations north to this circle. NRG, no exception, coming from this Skyhook Trials Countdown area, followed by SSG, Vanity, Temper, and Alliance, to see if they can crack any damage along the way. But really, this is a jungle gym of a quadrant of the map. It's whoever sees who shoots who, and that's about it.
Critical transition point for the NRG squad here as they move through this choke. There are a number of squads that we can check out from this beautiful overhead shot from our observers. They could run into a bit of resistance here if these teams don't continue to commit to these rotates. Vanity, I think a team that they're likely going to be mirroring on this walk-up. But Vanity might be interested in setting up a bit of a keep out of their own. They have that next ring information. You can see it looks like they're gunning for that Evo cache, which does make a whole lot of sense. They want to be as shielded up as they can be going into the latter half of the game, which might open up NRG's opportunity here to walk on through. And this is what's really beautiful about some of these higher caliber teams that we're used to seeing in Pro League and we're used to seeing at these international lands, is their ability to work the map is so consistent that it almost makes it a little bit easier for yourself to know how you're supposed to be playing the game and how quickly you're supposed to be playing the game to make sure that you're not running into squads you don't want to be fighting. But it looks like NRG has met resistance from an entirely different squad in either case, and it looks like they want this KP.
This is Temper right in front of them, but Most Hated is also right behind them, so it's a question of how much time and energy NRG wants to commit to this. No pun intended. Oh, I should have made it intended, though. But they'll hop up back in a house just as Most Hated makes their way over for, I think, what the real fight is going to be. Oh, huge bit of the bat done to O Nocturnal. That's actually really impactful if Most Hated wants to take this fight now. It seems like they do. Yeah, they're trying to breach. And Nocturnal's already off of shield again. Has to play off of the pylon while Reptar and Fun hold it down. But there's already such limited space that NRG has sort of had to bunker themselves into. Luckily, limited space is not a problem for Watson. So they'll fence right up and play for longevity, which means Most Hated's got to get a move on.
Yeah, and the reality of the situation is seeing that the Watson has sort of established itself on the inside. It's a little bit scary to siege this, especially if you don't have a crypto ultimate to maybe take down some of those defenses. I'm not sure if that was Bleed that was taking that engage. I want to say it wasn't, but in either case, a number of teams are not running that crypto, which means that the free siege that you can sometimes get on these Watson squads that are really relying on those fences and pylon to keep some of the more aggressive teams out, not quite going to be in the tool bag for themselves. So they're just going to move right along. Bleed, our final team to win a game yesterday. One of the teams that is not rocking that crypto, instead going for this new castle adaptation that we've seen from a number of squads seem to be work out pretty well for them. And, you know, shooting clay pigeons well doesn't feel too bad either. They're going to pick up that knock, and it's going to be to the detriment of the squad trying to make the rotate.
Gorgeous shots. Fun little intermission between fights that Bleed is now engaging in. They've already made their way down to Epicenter, and I believe this is Most... Oh, no, it's Go Next. That Bleed is fighting. Meanwhile, yeah, there you go. That is a huge team wipe from on high. So now it's a question of how much Epicenter do you want to control, because clearly Circle isn't fully pulling there, and it's already quite dangerous. Now you have Most Hated, who is paying attention to that fight against Go Next the whole time, which, by the way, Go Next is not fully cleared either. Now trying to fight up against Bleed. And it's going to lead to Shubi taking a whole lot of damage, and the Rolling Thunder having to get committed. Shubi down, though, which means time will be spent resing him. Most hated, important question to ask. Once again, how heavily do we commit? Shubi's back on top, though. Hated's on the way. They do spot them, but they will not get Kai, who is at go next route in the end. Bleed can still pay attention to them, and they are going to be fully recovered, so no chance of Most Hated being able to play off of advantage, and with those blue shields, no chance they're going to win this fight either.
Yeah, and to the question of wondering how much they want to hold in this hill, the answer is none of it.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult hill for them to want to hold on to, even with shield advantage, even with a new castle. There's just not a lot of defensible pockets for them to work with. So moving in deeper into this zone and maybe taking a more favorable, more defensible spot for this fight could certainly aid them. Most Hated is a team that is running yet another even more aggressive composition. Not quite as aggressive as we saw Team Liquid Alienware try to adapt in their final game yesterday, but nonetheless, another composition that is going to try and punish these bunker compositions, these Crypto Watsons that have to play the game a little bit more slowly in terms of taking those fights. They just got up to purples, so they're going to be at a slight shield disadvantage as well. So not the easiest fight for them to take. Instead, they're going to vie for that position, much like what Alliance is doing here, finding themselves up on this roof.
Yeah, they've hopped up quick, and they do not have a lot of space to hold on to. They're going to have to fight pretty perpetually for a good amount of this, unless they actually want to get inside, which it seems like they want to do. Spotting at least one team, they'll make the call. But again, a lot of time to prepare for a fight rather than actually have one. KCP does not have that luxury, rotating in from Overlook in this southeastern side of the circle. They'll be able to finish off the remnants of 5-star and fully recover before a team can really get to them. But they will have to move next circle. And they do have a couple teams standing in front of them. Luckily, they're very looted up. And this is a team that, of course, you can't really deny their mechs. Of course, Vosky coming in as well. Nice refresher for yesterday and today. He's been on absolute fire, which is, thank God. Because if he sucked, imagine.
Yeah, that would feel great to have your
back.
sub
Yay!
not checking in. A shame. If your sub isn't living up to what you'd expect, definitely a shame, but definitely not the situation.
Yeah, he is.
At least in these last couple of games that we've gotten the chance to see Vosky for the qualification section of this ordeal. NRG back on your screens now, but still just outside of the zone looking in. We already saw Alliance causing a little bit of a ruckus up in this Climatizer building. It looks like NRG is going to take a page from their book and try to clear out this northwest side. Going to be able to establish this pylon. Temporary home here, not as good without a new castle wall, but have some smokes to work with, and this position isn't too crowded. Not a lot of sightlines from up above that they have to worry about, at least quite yet. As more teams start to shift in, that could certainly change, but I think the priority has been placed on the buildings that are over right next to them. So even though they don't win out this fight completely and get that KP, if they get an opportunity here to clear out this side, they're going to be able to jog for position a touch later. Still, though, it is getting tough, and I think Alliance has realized the weakness in their positioning, and they're the ones to pull the trigger.
Yeah, they're going to chase this down. They were looking at Temper before, and they did get a knock on that, but with NRG also paying attention to them, Alliance realized that they had to just pick a fight and take it. And with, oh my God! And with how fast they can take fights, they don't necessarily have to sacrifice positioning for it. They can just win and go back home. Unlucky, though, a little too far from home. Stepping in his zone for a moment, but just really wants to thirst this. Wants to make sure Nock does not get the opportunity to get back up. Looks like NRG already has, but they're still very much stuck against this pedestal. They know the whole gang's here. And assisted by Tyler, who is probably going to be their sub in Mannheim, Alliance has to show what they're capable of, even without their full squad. Of course, this is something they're used to. So is winning. NRG fully forced out. And Alliance still kicking, still with some room to breathe, especially now that Temper has actually abandoned ship since Bleed has been chasing them down. They will complete and finish off Temper, and Alliance now have a full building to themselves.
Yeah, and it's a little bit interesting to see here. The building that I was calling out was not the one that is sitting further north. It is actually just below them. That's the the building that has received more attention from the other squads.
Yeah.
So NRG would have really liked for this to pull a little bit further up for them to get a chance here, but Alliance completely unpunished by that walkout, fully leaving their building, taking that fight, using the ring to their advantage to put on the additional pressure. No other teams really looking to get interested, as Bleed was dealing with temper in the meanwhile. So not even a third party, not even really any other pressure coming their way. Beautiful cleanup by Alliance, and they're going to be one of the last teams up on this northwest edge. You can see there right underneath them is going to be Donut Shop, who is going to have to likely move relatively soon depending on how this ends up pulling. In fact, this is what's interesting about this zone, right, is that depending on whether it pulls up or it pulls down, some of these random teams that have taken up a cart or a rock might be in a much better or much worse position as soon as that next ring pops.
KCP pretty confident in where they're at the moment. For good reason. They have their tower set up on top of this high ground. And nobody really contesting them except for Weewoo, but Weewoo is so fragmented that they are having trouble. And now with the pylon on, no sky nades can trouble them either. So they should be safe for the remainder of this. Oh, wow. Weewoo is actually going to try and fight this. Wow. They are hungry for this W. I really love to see it. Let's get it going, man. Let's fight it. Huge EMP to fill up on, but the damage from the Massive is crazy. Vosky gets the kill credit, but Onmu's going insane. So 2v3 after J-Trips falls, and there's time to bat back up. Avali hasn't been able to fight this whole time, and Maxine has already fallen back down to the lower ground. Very tough fight to take, but it's one that Weewoo decided to. Unfortunately, sans one of their players. Maxine now on the run. Oh, Maxine falling, in fact, actually. I think it's Janie instead. Or Avali. Pardon me, Janie was here yesterday. Oh, okay. That's the thirsts for Weewoo. So, full control for KCP, and again, they can take a second before fully moving here. Bleed cannot up against DSG. First, and Most Hated is coming in for the follow-up pretty much immediately after. Nuct is able to get the shield swap, but this will be a really tough fight for him. Especially with...
unlikely to be living through that one, I'd say.
Yeah, well, he'll try his damnedest. Not for too long. Easy finish up. And Bleed will fall. Most Hated. Good amount of space to call their own on this western side of the circle, but they will have to do the most moving out of any team.
Yeah, another team that has really cemented a really solid spot here since it has pulled up to the northeast is going to be Furia. I believe Thuggets was one of the teams that rotated very early, and I think took a spot very, very similar to that one. Maybe getting out-fought or out-rotated into what's going to be one of the better spots in this game. And I got to say, that makes the call from Weewoo look even more questionable, because their walk-up wasn't actually all too bad here into this next spot. But now that belongs to KCP, who hasn't sussed out Ava's positioning. I wonder if that is the one crypto player from Weewoo that is just sitting in cloak. Might be the case, but I'll have to check back in a little bit later, because right now a fight breaking out for KCP, trying to jog for that next spot in the zone. Looks like damage has been done. They just have to avoid some of the pot shots coming from up and behind them. They've managed to place a pylon, gonna fall and almost immediately being placed right in front of that door that did not get closed as they continued to fight. Onmu low. Onmu trying to rip this battery before more grenades continue to put on the heat, and it's going to be heat coming from Falcons. They're taking this high ground. They are holding this for now, but they want the inside. They want this KP.
Thuggets was allowed to migrate after KCP took that fight, and now KCP has spent all their resources trying to hold down the building that they were fighting for in the first place. The Falcons, it seems like they're having a little trouble breaching this building themselves, especially since Most Hated really is, or Thuggets really aren't that far away, in fact. It is a real kerfuffle that Falcons will deal with KCP first, and they will deal with them very efficiently to the point where it looks like Thuggets won't be able to take the fight. They will try, though. Walk right in. Down goes Dan, but Jen will fall in the trade back, so it is a 2v1. Zero will get a shield swap real quick, though, and it's not like Trev is in a decent position to follow up and thirst Jen himself. So all three members of Falcons will remain stable. Thuggets will take a knee and step out of that circle. To each their own, now that KCP is gone. I suppose two teams, one rat. The latter of which trying to move in, but getting a couple eyes on him from, I think that's SSG. But most of the action, my oh my, going on in that southwest corner that needs to be vacated quite soon.
Yeah, and you can already see, once again, reaffirming what we had some suspicions of earlier in the game. Furia just absolutely holding down that primo real estate up on the top right, undisturbed for the time being. In the meanwhile, 10 other squads are just going to have to battle it out for position, and not a lot of playable position left. I mean, you've got some of these walls on the outer edges of these buildings in the climatizer. This high ground not going to be holdable much longer, and fights going to be forced here by the zone. In just a couple of moments on your screen right now, your game one winners with a devotion in the back pocket. But look at the shield situation. They have not found nearly as much opportunity to fight, so they are sitting on triple blues going into this round 5 close.
Yeah, that opportunity has to come now. Everyone's on the move out towards this circle. It starts with Most Hated with that zip line. They'll run straight into Alliance with the help of an EMP, and Furia now gets to look at 2 teams fighting each other at the same time. Ava Lee is actually able to get rid of another rat of their own along the way before she will fully fall, and we'll go next. Most Hated will walk straight into Alliance and die straight to Alliance, but Hockey's is the only one left standing, and they've still got to get a move on too. That's where Furia comes in. Vaxlon has the perfect POV to strike down one and force Hockey's back into a cliff face and play for the long game, but the storm is coming in. You can't play that long game. Several teams getting burned along this zone as it gets whipped away. Not Moist and Weave the next to fall. SSG of a building. Falcons have an opening. Alliance have nothing. They fall next. Donut Shop to walk into Furia up on this high ground that's been uncontested, unusurped so far, and that might continue as Furia looting up, heading back upstairs with this zip line, and they're right back to fighting themselves. Most Hated can't touch him. Donut Shop can't touch him. SSG too far away. Falcons indecisive. That's your top 4.
Donut Shop down to just a solo there. Stomps still left alive. SSG holds the last truck in zone, and the Falcons have walked forward. They are holding this sort of I don't even know what you call this.
Yeah, what is this?
It kind of looks like some sort of energy pile. In any case,
a 6G tower is what that is.
They have pretty decent positioning here, specifically because of this Dark Veil, and they've already committed to it. They've already set it down. How are they going to utilize this to fight for this position? It looks like SSG has sensed the weakness, and the damage from Furia is brutal there. Falcons, in the blink of an eye, taken out, not committing to either play, and getting oh so punished for it. SSG versus Furia, 3v3 straight up for the game 2 win.
And SSG, they know what they want. They know what they have to do. They'll just fight this out as soon as they're fully recovered. Furia, here comes the rise up, finally having to leave this spot. What do you have to show for it? A jump immediately away and a Keon immediately down. The nuke wall is fragmented, and SSG have advantage before they even ask for it. It's an easy fight from there and an easier win. Map 2 goes to Space Station Gaming.
SSG recognizing exactly where they needed to be and how quickly they needed to strike when Falcons have committed to that fight. And I think putting down that wall early might have been a bit to their detriment, because that actually almost queued up SSG to say, as soon as we start hearing shots, we are walking forward and we are cycling right behind that. Turns out they didn't even need to do that. How going down early from some very long range aggression, relatively speaking, from Furia, probably just double Mozams from 3 different players. You know, that's kind of been the norm for the last couple of games. But nonetheless, damage was done to Falcons, SSG capitalizing. And then from there, I think the shield advantage was certainly a little bit significant. The castle wall tried to get set up a little bit further away, but there was a kind of a touch and go knock that I think we saw there, just opening up the fight completely for SSG to just take it down.
I think the problem is that you can't play reactively with ultimates. You have to play reactively with fighting back, because if you use ultimates, I mean, in a game in this patch where TTK has never been shorter, if you use 2 seconds to set up a castle wall 15 meters from your teteammates are dead. I'm sorry to tell you that, but your teammates are dead. Like, you cannot waste a single microsecond in this meta. And Furia unfortunately did. Their positioning, like you said, it wasn't completely safe. They had to step up to a higher ground. They had to step up outside, and SSG was just too ahead of the game. They were too ready. They frontlined immediately. Furia didn't realize that they couldn't set up with time, and so they tried to set up midway through a fight that they were already losing. That was a great decision called by SSG. And before that, like you said, the call onto a weakened Falcons who had just nothing to play off of, and again, who also couldn't react in time. Just beautifully done for an easy 6 KP to cap off what will be a very powerful game for them in the standings.
Yeah, and don't get it twisted. I mean, Furia is a team that we know knows how to work that new castle wall. There is no denying that. In day 1, Lobby B, they managed to win the first 2 games, and we highlighted just how necessary that Newcastle was for so many of their winning game plans. So it might have been just enough damage being done by Falcons, right, that they had to take that time to recover to get those shields up to be able to fight effectively against the SSG squad. That is the delay in the Newcastle wallet, a delay in that reposition that just allowed for the floodgates to open and for Space Station Gaming to be the victors this time around. But don't count out Furia. I mean, we saw them in that late game in game number 1. We saw them as a top 2 finisher here in game 2, and they're capable of winning against the teams in this lobby. Most certainly, you can see that there, as they are the gatekeepers of that top 3 position. 23 points for Furia, 34 for Not Moist, and rounding out the top, even though there was a massive advantage for Not Moist after game number 1, they scrapped together a mere 4 points while SSG flies to the top.
I mean, if you were going to ask me what 5 teams I think we're going to end up being in this top 5, it would be these 5 teams. This is very indicative of how I believe the rest of the lobby is going to go, but don't count out these other teams in not only the top 10, but the bottom as well. There's still so much more to be played, but 2R1C has been a real underdog contender. They just haven't been able to complete fights today, but yesterday that certainly was not the case. They were masters of high ground, and same can be said for Most Hated and DSG. I think they just need a couple more, not a couple more, but like these have been their warm-up games. I think they're definitely going to get better as time goes on. But man, it's top 5 gonna be tough to get dethroned, especially after point totals like that. But we will have one more game of World's Edge to see if one team can get ahead of the curve before we go to Storm Point and all hell breaks loose. It's gonna be a wild one for sure. Again, yeah, very well played by SSG. A lot of kills they were able to farm up, especially in that end game. And it came from a very different circumstance than Not Moist. I'm glad we saw 2 very different styles of winning on a map that is normally so figured out.
Yeah, there's no denying that. They played fantastically. I got to shout out the fact that Not Moist, they're pulling that zone, pulling their way. It was almost kind of the story of how we saw Falcons react in that previous game, where the zone pulled their way and somehow that actually made it significantly more difficult for them to soak up points. And that's because if you're in that zone early, right, and even if you have a composition that is designed to bunker down to really hold for those placement points, if you get fought out by a team like Most Hated or another fighting team, of which we have a number of in this lobby, you can get knocked off your perch pretty quickly sitting on triple blues. And I mean, what can you do at that point? Even though you get to that top 8, top 7 placement range, that's not really a significant amount of points for you when you're going up against teams that are getting big kill games like Not Moist did in game number 1. So the dichotomy there of how we expect these games to play out and how they're actually playing out, certainly a little bit different. Could be a result of this meta, right? How this has sort of shifted to allow for even fewer and fewer, I think, fighting teams to be in the lobby, just trying to prey on these weaker zone teams, even with the changes to controller characters, giving them an extra bit of shield in the zone. Sometimes that isn't enough.
Yeah, I with the prize pool and this being the finals, the skill groups between those who can fight and those who can't are really starting to show themselves. In the Carnage Cup, you are either a big dog or you're in the bottom 15. Who is a big dog? We'll find out in our 3rd game of World's Edge, our final one on this map before we head to Storm Point. Who is going to take this 3rd W? Mello, based on what we've seen, I don't want you to say a team that's already won. I want to know who you think has the best chance of taking it this time around.
There's a couple teams that I certainly would like to keep my eye on. I think Furia is certainly a contender every single time. They almost got it done there. Yeah. I mean, they were kind of on the right position. The timing on just all of the events that transpired right at the end kind of kept them out of that opportunity a little bit. So I think Furia always a contender. They had their big wins on Storm Point yesterday, but they're already showing up big in World's Edge. We saw them in that first end game. So I'm gonna put my bets on Furia for this game. But I also want to keep a close eye on some of the teams that are at the bottom of the leaderboard, just because their rotates and the way that they've executed on those first couple games probably could have been cleaned up significantly. So I'd love to see if that adjustment is made in this final game of World's Edge, because as we know, that map swap over to Storm Point can definitely shake up the leaderboard in a big way.
Absolutely, yeah. I expect a gigantic shift in the scores for most of these teams once we swap maps. There really is a powerhouse map for a lot of these teams, and that has shown itself. But I think Fury is a great bet for a favorite for this game. Like you said, probably the most consistently performing we've seen, at least this cup. And coming off of some really great wins in previous events in the past couple weeks as well. They've been doing pretty consistently well. And, I mean, if you're talking about mechs as a whole, I don't think Keon, at least, if not the other two, have looked better as an aimer ever. I think Keon's hitting his peak right now. Not like today, but like this area of time.
Yeah, looking really solid. I think that team just overall, that 3-stack has been really impressive. I think it's a team that people love to rag on, love to count out as top contenders in a lot of situations. But time and time again, they prove that they belong here at the top of the stack. Taking a look at the top of the map where the zone seems to be pulling. Are we finally going to get a run back of a Skyhook zone? Looking suspiciously like it might be. Already rotates coming through from Thuggets, who's been rotating incredibly fast, mind you. And yep, there we go. We get to see a peek there. It is going to be up towards the Skyhook. It looks like Thuggets. Very, very quick rotate here out of survey. Already looting up this next chunk of the tracks, and going to be one of the earlier teams finding their way into this next zone. Over on the western side, you can already see NRG starting to find their footing on that side as well, while Bleed to R1C and some other teams start to cycle suspiciously near each other, potentially setting up for a fight perhaps, which is something that you'd like to take in the early game if you can, because once you got 15 teams in Skyhook buildings, it turns into that coin flip scenario we've already discussed, right, where teams can coexist, and it really comes down to how you execute your quick micro rotates from building to get into those end games and to get into those game-winning positions.
Right.
Let's reposition there.
I expect to see a much slower game be played by both zone and edge teams this game. All roads do indeed lead back to Skyhook. And something to note is Alliance, a team who is playing Sky West and Trials, who normally could have played a lot slower and played for Praying. They had to go into panic mode and find a building very early themselves. So, wondering how they're doing shield-wise, walking into potentially a 2 or 3, 4-stack fight that'll come in ring 2 or 3. And so what happens to the teams that aren't here yet? The teams that are still making their way? Well, you might meet up with another. 2R1C and WeeWoo currently a little face-to-face. Most Hated and Go Next also meeting at another choke point on the tracks. And it looks like that one's going to get a little juicier a little quicker. Huge singularity thrown by Cravey. Does it catch anybody with the help of those ordinances? Seemingly so. But no confirmed kills until they find Kashera. 2v3 against the track. Seems that the latter have skulked away a little bit, but Most Hated does not want to let that go. They want to hold this down, but Cravey will be the one to overextend, wide swing, and now get caught by Slab, who is wide swinging himself. Taking that perimeter over. Laser. Great placement on the smoke to still be able to find those shots, but pylon set up and Kashera able to crawl back over. It will be another full-fledged 3v3 that Go Next look to now be the aggressors of themselves. And with Cravey down, not in a good position to get revived, they see this as a way to win an easy 3v2. Go Next is going to walk into this one and start blazing, but Laser will win that first 1v1 trade of damage, and we'll walk back up. Try to take this fight with the same confidence that Go Next is. Slab walking up with those beaks, doing some good damage, but the one-ways are very strong here by Most Hated. They know this territory, but seemingly not well enough. At the end of the day, there's just too much firepower to deal with. And Go Next will take back over, recover, survive, and thrive.
Yeah, even with that black hole there, trying to oppress after having gotten that opening knock, I think the damage response from Go Next was impeccable. They're able to set up that generator as well, so those grenades just swallowed up, not really putting on as much pressure as they would have liked. And all of a sudden, I think this just speaks to the experience of some of these squads, right? Go Next around for a long time. Kashera, one of those players that has been in that EU scene, specifically with that crypto, big, I think, crypto fan, certainly one of the few that was playing it out in the sticks of the meta, if you will, where no teams were really giving it any sort of respect. Kasher was right there, iPad in hand, moving around with that drone and putting on display just how good they can be against a very formidable fighting team. So we'll have to see if they can convert this game a little bit. I think Go Next a little bit off of our radar in our qualifying games, but has the potential to have a big game.
Absolutely. I don't think they were fully on yesterday, and of course Ping, but like you said, this is a team chock full of potential, chock full of good stats, and it's got 3 amazing players on it who move as a real unit. This is that's one of the, I think, most synergistic teams in the lobby today, for sure. Not Moist on a different sort of track, one that KCP additionally occupies. And they will try to take the fight against them, but they're walking into pylon territory here, so they've got to play it a bit slowed down, which means that they can get a couple fuse thingies thrown back at them. Gildersons is at 1 HP. Yipers. Let's take a moment, wait out all of this util, wait out all of these ultimates, and see if we can still take a fight after the fact. KCP is still around. They're willing to take this on. Is not Moist. There's a whole lot of teams behind him, so this may be the only points they end up getting this game.
Saw the HP there, about as much as Walty had in their game number 1. KCP maintaining this tempo of the fight, though. They keep answering back to the damage, and now trying to split this up a little bit, attack on multiple fronts, but Crypto EMP going to slow them down. They're going to try and break the drone to deny the information at the very least, and now Not Moist solidly in the driver's seat. They were full health here just a second ago, though. As you can see, that's how quickly the fights can swing in these lobbies. Might not matter. They have managed to take out Vaz, and they get the full thirst as well. And look who's joined the fray. Falcons is going to make this an even worse day. In fact, going to entirely ruin KCP's day. They're going to be the ones to pick up the loot. And more importantly, they're going to deny this loot from Not Moist, who really did all the work and are going to gain none of the benefit. In fact, might now have to fight one of the scariest teams that has ever been built in Apex Legends. We'll see if Falcons decides they want this track for themselves.
Yeah, Not Moist debating over where to contest. It seems like they're going to try and play to stay unless they can get back out. But Falcons, they're on the hunt. Seems like they want it. I think the comm for it was, why not? Oh, and there is why. It's Timmy, who's got a great angle to just fire away and intimidate every single member of Falcons out. Is this what Moist uses to explode and fight again, or is this what they use to run away? Ring is coming, so you gotta make that call soon.
Yeah, you got to think that based on where the zone is going, the fact that you're not one of the teams that's early in one of these skyhook buildings means you probably want to hold onto this edge for as long as you can, especially staving off very powerful teams like the Falcons. As you mentioned, those angles are pretty fantastic, and I think the one scenario where Falcons was certainly considering taking the fight might be off of the fact that they have that Dark Veil to work with, so you can really split up that fight and try and isolate 1 or 2 members to make it look a little bit one-sided. But right as I say that, Not Moist now having to deal with an entirely different side of this engagement as this team has wrapped around behind them. So it looks like the Falcons were just kind of peeking on by. They didn't really have any interest in taking this overall. They just wanted the positioning. They've jogged for it successfully. Now Not Moist still kind of caught on the outside. They're going to have to hold on for just a little bit longer.
Yeah, way to dance around them and then waste so much of Moist's time. It's not targeted, but it is a very great way to stunt one of your biggest contenders in the game. Really well danced around. Waltzy did some good chip while they ran out, but I mean, Falcons, they had, now that they are able to loot a full team's worth that they didn't even have to kill, they're able to just bat that out. KCP was able to fully recover, and that respawn will get them all the way down to Monument, but that means they'll have a good amount of time to just consider how exactly they approach the remainder of this. 5-star does spot them, but far too much cover for them to commit, especially with so much more circle to get through for 5-star themselves. They have a lot of work to do as well. So, I mean, no real excuse for any one team to be fighting right now unless in Skyhook somebody gets a little angry.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be almost a psychological battle against yourself to not want to take a fight on the floor above you in one of these buildings. But as this next ring pops, you can see just how unfavorable this suddenly looks for a number of teams. NRG over on the western edge, suddenly thinking, hey, where's this going? Why is it running away? We had a perfectly good building to win this game from, and it looks like they're already having to scooch on over. SSG not letting it go for free there. Might pop into that fight here in a second, and NRG decides they're probably going to go the other way. We'll see what that develops into, but this stack on the northwest is, I mean, foul. That walkout is going to be deadly, especially when we consider where the zone is pulling insane. Next. Nice little peek there, thanks to the producers here. We're going to let us in on a little secret 5-star, actually, one of the first teams in our zone number 4. And Not Moist, having held this spot, is going to get a pretty favorable walk up here, especially if they can continue to prevent those squads from walking in on that choke.
Yeah, there's going to be one choke these teams have to get from Skyhook to Circle once this ring closes. Pray to whatever deity you worship you have an evac tower if you're in Skyhook right now, because that is going to be your way out. NRG's Snake from the south may end up on better terms than the Skyhook walkout, but KCP is able to pay attention to them. In the meantime, SSG has just walked into the place that they'll have to leave. How fun, after their own little looting adventure. But it comes down to, of course, the Skyhook presence, and who is going to leave first and who is going to die last. Furia in one of these buildings, not on the perimeter, but pretty damn close to it, which means they are one of the centers of attention. They'll be fighting just about everybody they spot until they can walk out. Walking out. Oh, it takes a lot. Takes a wall. Bleed's going to use it to at least sever half of the sight lines off of them, but that still means you have a whole lot of lobby in your way and a whole lot of Skyhook to traverse. This is just to get inside. What a jump on the wall from Shuby!
Bro.
To just completely stun this squad. They'd take over the building. Now they are the ones under Furia. But fight's not done, job's not finished, and drop is done. This is, I believe, 5-star they're fighting. No, this isn't 5-star that they're fighting up against. I think it's Vanity, actually. And in fact, still playing with this desk. Yeah, you can only last for so long. Oh, no, that was fun. That was NRG. That Bleed is going to be able to now finish off. And they'll,
I think that's Empire, actually. The NRG on the entire other side getting smacked. So
dang. Okay, then yeah, that is
the
Empire,
keep outs are getting real right now. That was wild.
Oh, yeah,
it looks like the best offense is just an entirely aggressive flying defense. That's wild.
Yeah, that was nuts.
Temper now gonna have to fly down from above. They're gonna try and clean up this injured Bleed. Do get the opening knock on Shuby. Gonna be slowed down marginally by this
Vanity's coming.
EMP, but they're perfectly healthy here. This wall not going to do a whole lot when they've already gotten this opening knock, but this is a pretty narrow margin to be fighting through. Audi going to fall. No shields left for Cloak and Call Spades. This could be the turnaround for Bleed.
Thuggets now with the fight after 2 more teams get cleared from this doorway. What a building this turned out to be. And indeed, that shield diff is huge. Call Spades now on the run, seeing if he can recover this. Thuggets have 2 standing and are thirsting away, taking this building over. They are now they will be the only ones left to sit inside of it, save for this Temper Rat. And that's a great recovery for them to try and farm out some points. They're gonna try and get Kate back here, who was droning from miles away. What a fun off angle that they were going for that got thwarted by, seemingly the same people who were paying attention. And Trev stacks now. A foiled recovery may lead to Thuggets fully dropping, and Dan now has to choose to rat on the perimeter, just like so many others.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly what Not Moist was waiting to do, right? They knew that there were going to be teams late into this rotate. They knew that squads were going to struggle to find some footing in this next zone. So pressuring out of this choke, facing towards Sky, step 1. Step 2, now just walk on up and have one of the better, more defensible spots in zone. Furia is going to be that team that is continuing the punish on these edge squads that are trying to walk in late from Skyhook. Double Mozambiques for multiple members here. Shield swap might be coming through to salvage this one as well. Vaxlon not able to recover those shields, but the swing is there. The defense is incredible as Vaxlon just feeds damage, giving it out for free, dealing it out to anyone who bothers to take it. They can't survive this one as too many squads collapse. But what an incredible holdout there for at least a couple of moments, giving them hope and almost getting into this next zone.
Yeah, that was an incredible amount of extra points. WeWoo and GoNext were still staring at them. Furia knew they were going down, but SSG decided to step into the Dragon's Nest.
Next level.
Now GoNext, the only ones left standing on this western side of the circle. Not Moist, the ones paying attention to him soonest. WeWoo still has a rat standing, actually.
Oh.
But GoNext, definitely on center stage at the moment, as Kashera holding that Kraber, has a lot of free reign in this circle and is able to start basically whatever fight he wants to. 5-star on the southern end. Falcons is snaked around. Not Moist will be the ones that have to travel the farthest from these tracks that they so convincingly controlled for a while. Who has Godspot here? Does anybody yet? Maybe 5-star? Yeah, 5-star has Godspot.
Yeah, 5-star's been hanging out here. We called them out earlier, actually, I think before Ring 4 even started to close. And the only team that's really contesting them for their spot is Falcons right now. WeWoo gonna fall in 5th. We're down to 4 teams. Not Moist has done their due diligence to get to this spot. And now this fight in front of them might be a juicy opportunity for them to clean up even more points. Zero finding that opening knock. And Darkite gonna fall shortly after. So Falcons have successfully push 5-star off of this truck and might be pushing them into the lobby. Yes, indeed. 5-star is eliminated, and we're down to our top 3. We have GoNext, Not Moist, and Falcons, our final squads in this end zone.
I mean, this is literally a circle you could see in Mannheim. This is a top 3 you could see in Mannheim. Maybe with not this much space of the circle left, but still 3 very formidable teams, 2 of which already in the top 5. GoNext really wants a piece of that pie, and this evidently is their moment to grab it. Falcons with the most space, Not Moist with the least, but they have moved into circle as well. GoNext, pick of the litter. Watching from the high ground. What little there is, at least. Moist out in. Jeez, that is so out in the open. Very little to hug.
Look at how much space Falcons is commanding. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're playing so wide, but there's no real way that any of these teams can punish it. There is a Kraber on the side of GoNext. Remember, Kashera with that Kraber could turn the tide in one shot. One headshot could change it all here. And as we start to see this next zone preparing to collapse, the aggression is kicking off. It's going to be Not Moist realizing they don't have a game-winning position, and they're going to try and take one. But the Falcons holding strong, holding steady. They don't want to overcommit to this keep out because unfortunately that could mean the third party comes around for GoNext. So they're just trying to maintain that pressure, trying to maintain Not Moist in a precarious position and maybe force them out or catch a kill here and there. Imperial Howl getting sent to just that flesh health, but no knocks from either squad. And I think still 3 strong for Not Moist. They've managed to push into this one, Tenrik. There's a chance.
But Timmy is still on the northern side. They're going for a double angle here. They tried to sell the full rotation, and they made enough noise so GoNext would also be privy, but Timmy is right behind GoNext right now as they've walked up. I don't think Timmy goes for this, right? How much does he get?
Oh my God.
There's no way nobody's looking behind them right now. Are you joking? GoNext is fully focused on both of these teams. Okay, drone does spot Timmy though, but the EMP is gonna hit GoNext. This is the moment. Timmy going for the KP as Moist in the fight against Falcons. Timmy lets it fly. Can you confirm anything? No! No kills. And Waltzy and Guild are now stuck in the middle of everything. A very valiant attempt, the best that Moist could possibly have done, but it's between Falcons and GoNext. And with all the space and damage that Timmy did, it's never been easier for Team Falcons. They will take their very first win of the 7th Carnage Cup here on World's Edge.
Yeah, and they held on to that one beautifully. Not Moist there, I think, had the right idea and was close to the execution, but I think as soon as Falcons recognized just how split that squad was, all they needed to do was take down one knock. Again, anchor down as strong as they can because GoNext maintained their threat level, but Not Moist kind of doing some of the heavy lifting for them, right? Getting that knock, even though Timmy didn't get it by himself, there was actually some follow-up damage, I believe, from Waltzy that was able to get one knock onto GoNext, and with 2 teams completely shattered, Not Moist split from the rest of the group, or it's Timmy split from the rest of Not Moist. Falcons just had a kill 4, and when you have 3 of the best players in the entire world, that is is not a difficult feat at this point.
I gotta say, that's just such a crazy mental play from Moist because it does two things. One, it sells that you're playing for second, which is what a team would normally want to do here in this situation. And if you sell Waltzy and Guild moving up that far, then you see Go Next moving up and you see those teams just playing off of that third party, seeing who's gonna bite first. But in reality, Moist was playing for third and just targeting. With Timmy's backline, they guaranteed that Falcons would be the one to take the points, a team that's already in the top 5, and a team that is as good as Go Next continues to get less points and has a less chance of getting into that top 5. I don't know how calculated all of that is, but ultimately, it is literally still the best thing Moist have possibly done. And look, they're still in first place, so are they complaining all that much?
Yeah, I wouldn't be. I'd be pretty happy with 45 points in the bag right now. First place, but the margin has decreased, or rather, I think maintained a 1-point gap. I'm not exactly sure where we were in game number 2, but nonetheless, SSG is still near the top of the standings with 44 points, and Furia with third with 35, excuse me. Falcons finally starting to get on up there. We saw them sort of lukewarm in the leaderboard throughout day number 1, but the money is on the line this time around, y'all, which means that got to start picking up these big games, start to get that advantage, press that advantage where you can. And middle of the pack, you're absolutely hunting as soon as you can for that big game win to be in contention for that prize pool.
Yeah, there's no match point. This is not desperation time. You have 3 games left to play. It is game time for these middle of the pack teams. We'll see how they fare against the best of the best when we go to Storm Point after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
They say in life, there are no guarantees. They say a lot of stuff like that. Slow it down. Play it safe. Hedge your bets. So what? You gonna listen to that? You gonna stop because they can't guarantee you'll pull this off? No guarantee you'll win? No guarantee everything's gonna be fine? In life, you make your own guarantees. Nobody else will light your way. Start your own fire and keep it burning. And we guarantee you'll have one hell of a lifetime.
Welcome back all for one last time to the Knightsarena Apex Legends Carnage Cup presented by Zippo and Blacklight. Tenrek, Mellowcrit, we have 3 games left. We're going to Storm Point and we have our 20-team lobby super fired up at this point. What a top 5 that we see on our leaderboard and what games that they've been able to bring to us so far. But going to the less known, the more chaotic map, Mellow, there is definitely a shakeup due.
Yeah, we saw this yesterday a little bit, moving the other direction, coming from Storm Point over to World's Edge. Now we get the opposite. So the more learned map, points have been racked up for some of the squads that are maybe a little bit more experienced, more knowledgeable. But wouldn't be surprised to see them continue to press that advantage as we move on over to Storm Point. And the onus really is on the middle of the scoreboard. You've got 2R1C, Weewoo, Thuggets, excuse me. Teams like that are still within striking distance of the money right there. Still a couple of good games away though. So final half, Tenrek, this is the final opportunity really for them to start getting these points on board, and it's going to be about consistency because one game is not going to be enough anymore.
It's true. You have to have a standout performance every performance at this stage. That's what this means. That's what the money brings you. And I gotta say, I really do expect a couple of the same teams to continue to pop out. Falcons already in this top 5 after that World's Edge win boosted them up a little bit more. Storm Point, they are the best team on Storm Point ever. And Alliance, they farmed most of their points just by farming KP off of perimeter on Storm Point. The 2 best teams in the world right now are the best teams in the world on Storm Point. So I expect legendary performances from those 6 players to start things out. Additionally, I do expect a lot more impressive stuff coming from a couple of the other teams, like you said, on the bottom, particularly Bleed, I think got shanked on World's Edge, but Storm Point, they know how to show out, they know how to play their bunker strat a little more convincingly and consistently, and they can also shake their own play style up, I think, a lot more.
Yeah, and another team that we have to highlight as successful sort of operatives in the Storm Point sphere. We got to talk about Furia, right? Yeah. They won 2 games yesterday. So that's a team that was already racking up respectable amounts of points on World's Edge. No denying them that whatsoever. So can they put another win or 2 on board on Storm Point? That could make all the difference for them to cement their spot at the top of the leaderboard and even win it all. But for everyone watching, thank you once again for joining us as we lock in to our second half of the 7th Carnage Cup, over towards our first game of Storm Point to close things out for what has been a fantastic tournament so far.
And with no contests yet again here on Storm Point, we have time to loot, and we also have time to give another quick thanks to Blacklight for sponsoring this event. $10,000 prize pool obviously doesn't come out of nowhere, and neither do the chairs that Mello and I are sitting in today. They were all provided by Blacklight. Wonderful chairs, wonderful people. These gaming chairs are super comfortable, and they're not the only kind that are available. So many different kinds of chair and prices that will match your needs as a gamer. Very comfortable, very supportive. Go to pks.gg/blacklight. That is BLACKLYTE. That is pks.gg/blacklight to see what shares you could get today. And if you're interested in winning a free share from Blacklight, then in Twitch chat, the link is in our pinned comment. And on YouTube, you can go to pks.gg/BL_survey. Again, that's BL_survey to get a chance to win your very own Athena share from Blacklight. Again, big thanks to them for helping us out with this event and so many more here at Knights and in esports in general. Blacklight's been popping out at a couple events lately, and they got a lot to show for it.
Yeah, big thanks to all of the sponsors that help to make these tournaments possible. And it's been a blast so far. Taking a look at this first ring as well, I expect a pretty fun game here as we're aiming right over towards that checkpoint Cedo station or region. Thuggets, once again, we're seeing them move quite early, quick to the draw. But they haven't quite gotten themselves into a favorable endgame position. So I got to wonder if their shot calling might be just a little bit off of the mark, because it's not enough to be moving quickly and getting into position. It's about winning out these fights. But maybe this is where they turn it all around as they find their first fight up against Temper.
Very limited loot here at Cedo, apparently, as Temper has not had a lot of time to really prep themselves. We'll see if they get met at all. From the way Alliance is moving, you'd think that we were seeing a trench circle, but I think that's unlikely, despite how much I would love to see that. They could just be searching for KP. They found most hated. But Temper, they're going to throw down this evac tower. Thuggets has stepped away from Cedo. They'll hand that over until Temper's out of here. They want to try and find their own path. In fact, Thuggets are also going to throw down an evac tower and launch from the gate. So everybody's hopping into Circle first and foremost. Everybody's trying to find their pathway to this northwestern side of Circle, where it seems like we are, in fact, heading up. Oh my god, are we actually going to get a trench circle? Game 1? Dude, it's my lucky day.
It could be the case. And you can already start to see which teams seem to be favoring that potential ending. We've already got a Trident rolling as well for the likes of Weewoo. Looking for a big game here to break into the top of the stack. And Furia as well, driving a Trident of their own to try to get into this next zone. A little bit of a pod racing here to start things off. And actually Furia getting beat to the punch, it looks like. So they're going to opt to go a little bit wide. And we've seen this from Falcons. We've seen this from a number of squads that utilize these Tridents to rotate. They can actually go wide out towards the water and play out some of those end zones. It looks like the tip of North Pad already contested as well a little bit, so they're gonna have some space to work with. But for the time being, Temper, Furia, both teams hanging around this mill side, and Weave also just outside of this zone. So a bit of a cluster starting to form as this first round quickly comes to a close.
Nuggets are actually right here as well. It seems that this was a pretty common plan B for a lot of these teams who couldn't make it to either Beast or Pad. But Furia is going to hightail it over one bit at a time. They'll make it over to the doldrums of the down Beast, where a lot of teams have set up. This was KCP's drop point, so they'll be the most looted team out of everybody that's sat on top of it right now. And that is a team that loves down Beast, that picked it as their first draft. They were the 5th seed when it came to picking POIs today. And again, it was not a snake draft, it was sequential. So Alliance got both draft picks 1 and 21. 2R1C is finally going to finish off most hated, I believe this was, over in North Pad. Alliance has seemingly stepped away or died. I don't know. But
yeah,
they ain't here.
2R1C at full power, by the way, is Jaco back into the mix. We didn't see them yesterday, so this is a full power, full rostered up 2R1C, which could be making all the difference here. Still a pretty solid performance yesterday, but again, we're going to keep saying this over and over until we get to the real end of these games, right? It's right at the edge of the line where you need to be to just have one big game and be back in contention. 2R1C could be the team to do it here, especially with the zone pull. They have an opportunity to do exactly that.
Yeah, they have a great point total to springboard off of right now, and evidently picking up on the third party between Most Hated and Alliance that lasted a lifetime, seemingly. That's massive positioning. They'll get moved on by Bleed next, who are hopping in the trenches. SSG also coming from that north face. Could see them next. But the majority of the fights are taking place in Down Beast and Checkpoint at the Mo. DSG at a little farther down, closer to Cedo. A little spat with NRG. They will go their separate ways, though. DSG going to head to the mill next, where Temper is still sitting after Furia decided to leave. I wonder if DSG will be as friendly neighbors.
And a lot of neighbors starting to get real friendly with each other here. It looks like Down Beast is going to be the bet for a number of squads. And the team that's actually playing out towards the water is going to be Vanity. So they're going to be on the outside. I think rarely is this a spot where the end zones pull directly in your direction. So they're going to be hoping for a little bit more activity from the likes of Go Next and from the likes of Weave. Once they start to get active, a little bit more space might open up for you. But no real threats here from the other squads onto Go Next and onto Vanity. But that almost becomes a bit of a detriment. You have to be so proactive to try and progress your loot state, right? Once you've gotten all your loot and you're sort of bunkered up, you're not doing a whole lot in terms of progressing your resources. And in fact, you slowly bleed out of resources the longer the game goes. So a timely third party here, a timely fight might be what Go Next and Vanity are both going to be hoping for, as this ring here starts to really just get congested on that top left, and no one really wants to take a fight here because the third party, or really even the pressure from range, is going to be too much to be worth the risk. And I imagine these teams are just going to sit tight for a while some of the other brawls continue to figure themselves out, and while Falcons on the eastern side continue to figure out just how much Evo they want before they decide to even play the game.
Well said. But yeah, I agree. The third party needs to come in soon. Because Vanity and GoNext are not just playing with a lack of resources, they're playing with a lack of intel. Because Down Beast is such a complicated structure, teams really could be anywhere. And the less time you have to spend crypto droning, the more time you get to go for those 3Ps. See, it seems that Not Moist is also running to the mill, which means that Temper, unfortunately, it's not going to be a quiet neighborhood much longer. Property values are about to plummet as DSG and Not Moist begin their own little bout. EMPs abound, but DSG have the space and collateral to deal with it. Drone still pestering them a bit as Not Moist makes the breach. Not the call just yet. They in fact drop back down, trying to assess from a couple different angles. Enemy holding the former, while QZ and Designful try to find an open door to play off of, but there's just so many damn doors in the mill that Moist is playing Ring Around the Rosie with them.
Yeah, and I mean, no one's gonna just full send at this point. There's too many teams waiting on the outskirts. You don't even need a drone to tell you that realistically, because it's just the truth. There's going to be teams ready to pounce, ready to steal away your position. It looks like Temper isn't even going to wait around much longer for this fight to progress. They're the ones that have started to pull out of the fight, it seems, though.
Yeah,
so
they want it out.
DSG has staved them off, but there's another squad that's hanging out just to their north. Actually, two squads, NRG and Empire, who have started to kick off a fight of their own. I think NRG was actually finishing up another fight, and Empire realizes this could be their opportunity to steal away a spot from the likes of NRG. Nice damage, though, and they're actually going to be the ones to just wipe out Empire, sitting on triple blues, by the way, but it doesn't matter when you're as good a fighting team as NRG.
Yeah, but Temper has been watching this, and now they're ready to step in. This is the delectable fight that they've been looking to take in Mill beforehand, and they'll start out with a good couple picks. It's just fun left, and he's not got a whole lot of health left. He's got some good skills, though. Good shield dancing to last a little bit longer and keep it a little contested, but two will stay standing for Temper, and they have a little room to breathe. DSG paying attention, but not committing.
And there was a world there where fun gets it done, but just on the margin of how close they were to falling, if NRG were the ones with the purple shields, we have a completely different fight there. Not the case, however, and they are going to be taken out in 16th. Temper going to take up their house. And Falcons have finally decided to join the rest of the teams in this next zone, under a little bit of fire. But once again, the contests here at the very edge of this zone are gonna be a little bit contentious, a little bit tough to take, because you know that teams on the inside are just gonna continue to take pop shots and continue to pressure. In fact, Falcons in a fantastic position to just outright punish by taking a third party if your fights on the outskirts take too long.
Yeah, especially in the trenches where everybody is so piecemeal. If you mess up one time, then you're ISO'd for seconds at a time, and that is enough for Falcons to swoop in and eat you alive. 2 R1Cs. Because of this taking a bit of a back seat, Gonna slow things down while Donut Shop has to rat it out to an extent. Hal searching, waiting, wow. Found ya. Stomps, great spot.
Spooky.
Love that for us. And so now 2R1C will show their hand. But once again, it's 2 Falcons that really didn't struggle in their first fight. So you're not really third-partying, you're just kind of instigating. And Falcons, they're definitely fine with that. But is 2R1C is the big question. Well played by Waltzy to catch out enemy and finish out that thirst. DSG and Moist have still been fighting things out, and Temper's actually made their way back to Mill to see if they can feast on the scraps again. But as it turns out, fight's still not done, and Not Moist is alive and kicking perfectly fine. And now, Temper is here to fight, and they have to just commit to it while Not Moist prepares themselves. Waltzy immediately will shut down Adi on this high ground, and it just seems like Temper is a little too scattershot to be able to take this on. Moist shouldn't have trouble either expelling or winning this fight.
Yeah, they've bided their time to find the right opening. Call Spades is going to fall as well, and 1 runner left for Temper as Not Moist establishes their hold,
right
or rather
DSG.
reaffirms their hold on this side of the Mill with a little bit of help from Weewoo. But now they're really riding on this tower to try and get out of this situation. Not Moist actually going to use the over-under here to try and cycle around and pinch this last member of DSG, but they're going to be met with some resistance as SSG has rotated out ahead of them into these rocks and immediately punished as It's Timmy falls.
Qzier still on this run as the rest of Moist catches up now. Timmy does fall though, so well done, but no more than that. Poor guy. Very upset that hiding spot was revealed, but it was only a matter of time. Remainder of SSG now get to poke and prod away at this Moist squad, though, that is committed to this building. And they have a lot of space to call their own. Furia may be the most possible suspect to take him down, but what reason does Furia have to leave the spot that they're in? Falcons were able to deal with 2R1C in the meantime, so they'll have a pretty clear path to the beast itself. Go Next is not explicitly watching them, they're more just watching whatever's in front of them, just to play for whatever fight actually may come their way. Until then, it's placement, placement, placement. And SSG is going to place themselves on top of this building, start taking the fight in the pylon. It's clear they need to aggress, they need to enter, and Phony's going to do it first. Now on top of the huge stun! On to Koi as well! All of a sudden, it's down to Zainu. And with a Rolling Thunder to protect, they're able to hop on, but Furia has indeed made their way on down to third party this. And Thirst, Zainu now has to run away, and with the smoke has a little bit of space to collect. No, you got 3 members of Furia staring you down, certainly can't survive much longer. Zainu's doing a pretty good job though, bobbing and weaving in Furia. They have to duck back down, shield back up and loot. Not as concerned about Zainu as Zainu may be. And he'll in fact seemingly get out for now, but Madness is on the prowl. Desperately wants this KP if he can get it. But even more so, wants to guarantee the position. We're only in top 10. There are so many more points in store for Furia if they can place themselves sooner. And so they will abandon this potential 1 KP for an even more potential, more KP off of that placement from this building that they controlled so convincingly. Zainu's gonna rat it out.
Yeah, and I mean, that was just such a heads-up rotate from Furia there. You can see the Pathfinder ultimate facilitating their quick and speedy entry into what was a fight that SSG should have had in the bag, mind you. 3v2 situation against Not Moist, nearly losing it out on their own. Furia, of course, just making it completely inaccessible for them to continue fighting.
Zainu went back to
running for the hills, still have a solo, and they get their spot back, which is all the more significant when you realize where the zone has pulled. All of these teams that were betting on the top of Beast are suddenly finding themselves in a dire situation.
Keon's alone right now, and a full Thuggets team has just walked into his building, while Vaxlon and Madness are still trying to kill the apparently unkillable Zainu. And so instead of committing to this fight that they would easily win against Thuggets, they have to commit to a 3v1 on the face of the circle. An unfortunate sacrifice that's made. But Furia still play for last ability just by playing their own game, apparently. Another zipline tossed in to get a better angle onto this lone SSG rat. Obviously forces a couple other eyes onto them, but it's a matter of time before they find this kid, right? There he is. Oh, just barely missing. Keon's got to be the one to take him down. And as Weave goes down, that's another easy point. Up for Zainu. as it seems like he will finally fall, though. And now Furia can turn their attentions back over to the Thuggets, who did, in fact, take over that building.
And that was actually a nifty little reposition for Furia, even though they don't necessarily get that kill out the way that they wanted, at least in terms of how much time it really took to clean that one up. They do actually get access to this outer wall, and this zone is ping-ponging up and down, over and over, which just somehow continues to favor every direction that Furia decides to walk. In fact, now they're one of the earliest teams into this next zone, only sharing it with a lone member of Vanity that is out trying to poke and prod to prevent teams from walking in for free. Weewoo going to be the only other team up in this Clover building going to be able to hold that last leaf to maintain position in this next zone. They have the pylon as well as the good old crypto to cement and really dig in their heels on this next zone. They're going to be able to continue to pressure. They're going to be able to continue to hopefully evo up. That's going to be something that's going to be lacking in this next zone if they can't get that situation sorted. But nonetheless, great walk up from Weewoo.
And again, Maxine jumping in the fray this time. It was Janie. That was the Ava's second yesterday. J-Trips still filling in the mix. So good to see a little bit of everything from Weewoo, apparently, this tournament, and very much worth it with the performance that they've shown, the insane pathing and ring calling that they've been able to make. Speaking of ring calling, man, Fury has been having quite the day of shot calling. Just their ability to weave their way into wherever they need to. They're still not even in circle yet, but they will be.
Oh my god.
Here's KCP on high, able to just take these pot shots at Thuggett so convincingly. Anmu's gonna hop back down after the shot from the 30-30 expire and has no trouble dealing with the remainder with that PK. But now you've got a couple other teams staring at you, obviously. Weewoo being the closest right outside this building, with the starter on Anmu and Voski down to a sliver of health, barely any shields as well. This should be an easy fight for them to take. The question is, do they even want to take it? There's not much building left to take, and they have to make sure that that's convincing first before they finish off this high ground. KCP may be able to just sit up top, where Furia has now headed to up top this beast to take their own pot shots at Vanity's Rat and what's left of 5-star. So 3 teams remaining, all fully kitted except for that first member of KCP that went down. I want to say that was Anmu. But Furia, once again, have the best position, once again, have the ability to wait for the walkout, and once again have the most resources out of any of the teams in the lobby. Everybody on KCP's purple, everybody on Weewoo's blue, Keon's red.
Yeah, you got to remember that the biggest counter to this castle wall is bullets. Hemlock going to take down that middle wall, and I think it's only a matter of time before this cover is entirely evaporated. Smoke's coming down means that maybe sensing a little bit of weakness on their neighbors up above. KCP is actually down to just Vaz and KCP, remember, as Anmu did fall and get thirsted on the transition down to this spot. And Furia is getting, I'd bargain to say, a little bit greedy on this position here.
This is ambitious.
It might not matter, though, as the fight is likely to break out between the two squads down here on this Clover. And I think Deeds maybe recognizing this and says, we're going to cut our losses. We're going to walk forward a little bit and hope to avoid some of the wrath of Furia, who has superior positioning, superior loot, still has a castle wall left to place. And now they're really putting on the pressure. They're actually just going to cleanly take out KCP from the looks of it. Deeds already falling, and it will be Vaz falling suit. So now it's just Furia up against a weakened Weewoo in front of them.
Yeah, Weewoo at least able to grab that last KP, but it's a tough fight to take with the shield advantage that Furia has and the absolute insane damage that these guys are dealing. Vaxlon's been able to sit in front of the entire game, and do whatever he wants to. Furia follows suit. They will take the first game on Storm Point for their second day in a row.
Wow. I mean, I think this is just a team that doesn't get talked about when it comes to best teams on Storm Point. What is it going to take for them to get the respect that they deserve? That was yet another incredible display of just how well they're able to work this map, how they're able to navigate all of these dynamic situations that continue to put them on their toes. They find the right answers to almost every scenario, and somehow, some way, they just find themselves in the best spot in the match time and time again. Furia, undeniable talent right now on Stormpoint, and I'd love to see them do it again. I think there's very few teams that are around to stop them with how well they are playing today.
Yeah, I mean, seeing how professional they are on this map, I think it's safe to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that ring calling was not luck, and those sacrifices they made were calculated. The macro pathing of this squad the whole way. I mean, every second you looked at this team, you saw intention. And you just can't see that in many teams on Stormpoint. Even though this map's been out for so long, you still see teams who have those slivers of time where they don't know what they're doing or they don't know what to do next. Furia has a game plan every second of every game here. And just the way that they're going the whole way through. I mean, Vaxlon got to look up on one ways for the first half of that fight and just got to fire away with a W key in the second. And that spoke to much of how that team flowed for the entirety of that game. It will boost them up to first place with a 7-point gap to boot. Magnificent fodder this late in the lobby. GoNext maintains their position in the top 5, but man, that top 4 gap is looking pretty convincing at this stage. What a surprise that it's the 4 teams that have won their games so far. Meanwhile, in the bottom, looking to creep their way into that top 5, not too far behind GoNext, are so many teams, likes of Pioneers, 5-Star, Weewoo, 2 Rats, Alliance, even DSG, Thuggets, and Vanity, and Temper and Hated have a shot.
And I think if you're really any team in the lobby right now trying to take down this Carnage Cup, you best be sweating bullets right now, because we've got 2 more games. Both of them are on the map that Furia has performed on so consistently throughout the weekend. I expect them to continue to get big points, and there is a good chance that gap continues to extend. And right now, that 5th place position is GoNext, 28 points. Not unattainable for pretty much every team that is just outside of it, to be completely honest. I mean, we've got like a 5-point gap right now. So I think the first place definitely still could get stolen away from underneath them. Furia could slip and could start to fall behind a little bit, especially if Not Moist continues to find those small successes that lead them to the big games. Reminder, we saw them in the building there as a duo. I think the last time we saw them have a duo and they were able to get back their entire squad, they actually won the game on World's Edge. Yep. So it was starting to feel a little bit like deja vu there. I wasn't sure if SSG was going to get it done, but it didn't end up mattering, as Furia was the team to come in for the third party and make sure that wasn't the case. So obviously not knowing what that team was, but that was kind of exactly what they needed, right? Taking out Not Moist on their way to a win.
Yeah, and that'll catapult them up to a place that, like you said, they do have to maintain. These big guns are certainly going to come a-blazing, and Furia has to stay on top. They will have to continue fighting the same teams for these same positions. It is clear there is an echelon contesting this 10K prize pool, and Furia sits atop it, but for how long? They have to span it for 2 more games to guarantee that 4K in their pockets. And it's got to be once again on Stormpoint. These last 2 games, yet again, no contests for the POI drafts, which means that we'll still see that mildly slower game, but depending on where the ring pulls, because that Beast ring had a very slow early game and then a surprisingly fast late mid game. I'm a bit surprised by how many teams didn't even wait for the walkout that time. I'm wondering if that's the same, not impatience, but just proactivity that we'll see these teams kind of try to farm out in these last 2 games.
Yeah, and I think that can be one of the most consistent game plans on Stormpoint, trying to get fancy with your rotates and catch a team a little bit sloppy on their rotate and maybe get that fight done quickly enough. Sometimes is a little bit less sustainable of a strategy, especially with teams that you're less familiar with. You can't quite call out the plays as consistently because these teams play in different circuits. They play at different levels, and you're not always entirely sure that you're going to find team A in spot B exactly when you need them to be, so you can take that fight and sort of clean things up before you continue to rotate. So sometimes getting into that spot early can serve to get you at least further into the game and give you a solid chance. But I think that strategy might also be kind of a double-edged sword. I gotta keep mentioning it because I think it is certainly notable with where they are in the leaderboard. But Thuggets has been rotating very fast every single time, and I think their POI choices certainly speak to that, having Epicenter and Jurassic. So you'd expect this team to be moving quick and getting into a really good spot, but it just continues to not really reflect on their score.
Agreed. We do see those teams that vie for that one game plan and have, you know, a script, have that choreography, but there's always a roadblock. There's always some new thing you have to adapt to. And Thuggets, as great as they are not the best fighters in the lobby.
Closer range.
WeWoo, on the other side of that, though, is a team that I think we can speak to that has had that ability to consistently move and then get points off of it. They have been so good at getting these top 4s, top 5s, and it hasn't led to them getting in the actual top 5 leaderboard-wise because they obviously are not as active in the kill feed. But they get pretty close, do they not? I cannot speak enough to how technically gifted these players are. Please, please, please watch out for them when they fight because they are very formidable.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite players to watch. I think if you're not familiar with the Tier 2 scene at all, you should at least know J Trips. You should know Trips because that is a name that I expect to have a track record here in the next couple of seasons, certainly, as a player that is going to come into his own. And once they find the right roster, I think could be an incredibly formidable controller threat internationally. So that one substitution here with a stack of FEMB players that are longtime duo, at least in terms of Ava and Janie, even with Maxine sort of slotting in, have, as you said, shown that consistency, and we know that this team can fight.
For sure. Yeah, never count out WeWoo because they will force you not to. They will be in those endgame lobbies, like it or not. Alliance trying to make their way to their own as they'll once again head over to North Pad to face off against Most Hated. It's a rematch without necessarily that third party standing in their way, but Alliance might not be standing in the way either as Tyler and Unlucky get absolutely destroyed. Hockeys is going to GTFO.
Yeah, and it might be the fact that they're playing a very defensive comp. Oh, wait. No, they're not. Very aggressive setup, much like Most Hated, but they seem to just be getting beat out here, and I think this has been pretty much every game on Stormpoint so far. Gotta respect Most Hated, by the way. They are unafraid of these LAN champion caliber teams in these contests. We saw it yesterday up against Falcons, where they did have a losing record to them in Siphon 2-1, but that one that they won, man, it looked incredibly promising. It looked like they have what it takes in these team fights. So not afraid of Alliance whatsoever. They've taken them down, excuse me, multiple times on this map so far. And this is another team that could be a pot simmering, about to boil over if there are, the stars align, if they're able to get one or two really solid fights and then just shove their way into one of these end games. Another team that is very capable of that 3v3.
They always do more than you expect, and those are the most dangerous kinds of teams. Go next, a team that has been doing a little more than we saw yesterday, but still really wants to define themselves in the top 5 that they've just barely escaped to. Not losing this fight would be one hell of a good start. Impeccably placed gate to wall out Frex and at least finish off 1/3 of 5-star here. That just leaves Zenile and Darkite, who will be getting out of here, but not for very long, as they're able to get spotted by not just one team, but 2. Temper is now moved into the mix so hard that they'll actually get downed by Kashera. Beautiful double kill that forces the remainder of the fight. And so much more has been bit off than what initially Go Next thought they were shooing.
Right here, got one.
Yeah, that's wild. You cannot just walk up on a team like Go Next. And I think the timing there was pretty sloppy. That walk up seemed like there was Audi just by themselves, and they're not playing their signature Mirage this time around, so no easy sneaky getaway from them. Absolutely punished for a very delayed reply to that fight that was happening for Go Next. And yeah, that one's gonna hurt. They are likely to be able to recover Audi. They are going to be able to hopefully pick up that banner with the drone, pick it up remotely and stick it remotely. There's a couple of locations still on the map for them to do it, but none all that proximal. In fact, the closest one being right in the direction of the team that just did the damage to their squad. So unlikely to be dropping it there. Might just have to wait and bide their time for a better opportunity.
Yeah, and it necessitates sacrificing this circle position that they've already gone for. I mean, Temper really have to pick and choose what they want to do. Bleed is a team that unfortunately hasn't really gotten to get their feet off the ground so far this lobby, including in Stormpoint, and once again, they will be aggressed. I believe this is Falcons, though, so certainly a tough fight to take. Knocked is back up, though. Oh, no, it's 2R1C. My mistake. I believe Uchako, though, may have gotten downed, so the 3v2 that Bleed now feels a lot more confident and capable in taking. But so many buildings you gotta traverse. Where, oh where, are these last Europeans? There they go! Zooming away with their mobility options. Noct is the only one who can maybe match up with them, but the zipline is gonna get dropped. Does Dropped chase this? He will, at least to an extent, searching for where they may have fallen off, but at least just gonna try and push this envelope with some help. Yeah, whole team comes screaming along, but at this point, ability to reset and potentially find another team to call as natural cover. But there's nothing close enough, and nobody wants to engage in a simple 3v2, make it a 3v1 against the Rat before they move on. Bleed can make very quick work of this, and thus making it a possibility for a third party to happen in the first place. Very good structure here. Way to hold on to those bats as well to play the long game and not waste a lot. And it turns out that Uchako will be the last member of 2R1C standing, at least in our field of view. Bleed now turn their attention to a different opponent in SSG, who will take that very same zipline back over to the spot that was just retreated from 2R1C to hole up and bunker up for a little bit longer in this very wide circle.
Gotta say, top 10 scariest things in Apex Legends is a full 3-stack walking at you with a mobile shield, not a care in the world. Yeah, absolutely terrifying sight to behold, I'm sure, on the other side. But Bleed is able to clean up this fight, and they didn't get punished for it too harshly by the likes of SSG. SSG looking like they were getting a little bit interested there, but did not feel quite confident in taking that 3v3. So they're going to slow things down a little bit. They're going to gain this information from that beacon as well to figure out kind of how they want to navigate this next transition. And you can see here on the top left that they still got a ways to go. This could likely pull down to sort of this open space in between the mill and Cedo. Specifically those houses that are right around where Thuggets has been hanging out for quite a while. And could this be Thuggets' opportunity to finally have that breakout game? They are here early. They seem to be well established in that next zone. Possibilities for them to really start to brighten up. Right now for SSG, and a number of squads still sitting on the outside. Not too much to worry about quite yet. Zone 2 not quite closing, but 18 squads, Tenric. Pretty crowded next ring that we've got in our midst.
Yeah, a lot of teams still fanning their way in, so not as much contestable property just yet in the circle itself. Teams playing a bit more patient, a bit slower, and that's because there's a couple more options to get inside rather than this lone choke. And of course, with the slopes, you can move pretty quickly along this map regardless. A couple teams actually still just checking perimeters. Fury, I think, is still on a Trident all the way over in Cascade, just looking for loot, looking for rats. And they may have spotted one in 2R1C. But meanwhile, set up on the edge is NRG, who Donut Shop is flying right above them, and that can't work for very long, so seems that we'll have to take a bit of a fight here, but Nocturnal taking a decent chunk of damage before that fight starts, and DSG also on the way, so this could get chaotic very quickly. It will. Rolling Thunder's traded to start things out. Fun gonna dip back out, take a whole bunch of damage, though, from these members of Donut Shop that are watching him from a ways away. Vayne gonna start to walk up while Davis Wave holds the long ground. And with DSG also starting to make some noise, show themselves proper, NRG get to ask themselves if they truly want to take this on. How much of this lobby has DSG revealed themselves to? Does NRG even know that they're here? Probably with... Oh no, they're just taking these bots. Okay. Looting back up. Oh, here comes Falcons too. Oh, this is going to be a party for sure.
Yeah, and I think NRG recognizing that if they're going to take this fight, they got to take it swiftly. And they got to clean it up before the other squads that are sort of waiting in the wings for their spot in zone start to join the party. Design is going to fall. Fun FPS seeming to do the right damage onto DSG, but I don't know if they're aware of the looming threat of the Falcons that have already walked up, and certainly now they must be aware of exactly what's going on. Falcons helping out to clear out Disguised, and the engage here from Zero with that Rolling Thunder. They're going to pair it, combine it with that EMP, so shield damage has been done. But are they going to be able to follow up with the weapon damage in an opening knock? It does not look to be a case. In fact, they're going to get slowed down a little bit by their own Rolling Thunder, trying to cut off and isolate this fight, make sure no one else starts to peek on in and make this fight more difficult for them. Falcons fully on the walk up on this height. Reptar has some position and could punish them for their hubris, and it looks like NRG has gotten away from it this time around. Not too much punish onto the Falcons, but NRG now, you gotta wonder what the resource situation looks like after that.
Very good on Reptar to win that foot race, to force that extra perspective rather than try to cover fire, because Falcons are absolutely winning that fight. But now with this high ground and the pylon and the trident, NRG, I mean, this is beachfront property. Falcons will head downstairs a little bit more. Jed burned down. Obviously, they can't follow up on that, but NRG presence that they're proud of, that they'll even follow up on. Falcons, though, a lot of space to call their own. Until Not Moist decides to step into the picture, they're also right behind this.
Chance.
This is marquee. This is a marquee fight, really. I mean, the Avengers are here. Oh, Falcon sliding in as NRG makes the approach. Moist has begun to fight as well. It is, again, a kerfuffle that Falcons are the biggest victims of. And now, after Moist is dipped into the kitty, NRG will take the brunt of the punishment with the EMP dealing all the shield damage, and the immediate fight after forces the pylon to go up once more. NRG, they will bunker here whether they like it or not, but Moist are still winning the damage trade-off, which means they're going to get aggressive. They're going to start this fight, and they're going to start it now. Huge shots on the Mozambiques, but it's still not enough individually, and there goes Gilderson's. Waltzy a little low with Timmy alone on the stairwell. Moist is split apart at the moment, and NRG have their pick of the litter. Timmy goes next. Waltzy, the one last man standing, can't appropriately shield dance either, has to just go for the fight. Here we tango among the knockdowns. Waltzy still decently stable with this pylon to help him with the shields as well.
No shield swap.
Back inside. No swap available. The thirst. There's only one dance available. Waltzy playing against such a stark disadvantage. Has to head back up to the door to play with a shield. Now trying to weave, force out this NRG res. Maybe extend this fight a little bit longer. We'll go for the res onto Timmy. Or McGild, excuse me. Timmy's banner is already gone.
That's huge.
Oh, the distraction! The 2v1 is back! But Waltzy wins the burn fight, and NRG has to go for attempt number 2 with far less health. That leaves more than enough time for Waltzy to get the res this time, just as the storm comes in. Perfect hole to drop out of to avoid this ring damage. Perfect moment for Voice to exact onto NRG and stay barely afloat. But at this point, there's no doubt people are paying attention. There's no doubt people are going to thirst this. Guild will easily fall. Waltzy on the scurry while Bursty tries to fire away, but seemingly he's the only one who can pay attention. No, here comes Trev Stacks from the Thuggets. The other lone
Another solo.
exacting his own revenge, but he can't land any shots with this lone Mozambique. Yes, he can. Finishes off Not Moist on a sliver of health and will die to the final shot from Trips on Weewoo, who has been watching from the mill this whole damn time. What a fun brawl that was between all of the top 5 teams. The only one left in it is Furia, and they're in circle.
Yeah, that was just really the peasants fighting for scraps there at the end. Disaster for the likes of Not Moist, who seem to have the upper hand and were just completely stuffed out by the flexibility and recoverability of Fun FPS and Knock. I mean, almost bringing it back. And even though they get that advantage, ultimately, they find themselves just out of the top 10 that has just been cemented as Empire does fall. It looks like Weewoo staring down across the way onto Vanity. They're going to be joining the fray of this top 10. And probably going to get another opportunity to have a huge game and pop their way up into better contention on this leaderboard. Vanity hasn't quite shown up today, hasn't quite had the performances that we know these 3 players can execute upon. And looking at their position in the zone, I think it's going to be another difficult game for them to transfer over their progression in this map so far to a solid end game. It could happen here, taking a look at this next ring, but it looks like Bleed is not going to let them have it, at least in any sort of easy walk-up.
Pulling a traffic stop on Vanity here at this recon beacon, and oh, they will do the
That's
damage
a duo.
to back it up. Knocked and dropped. This is Sans Shubi, and they're taking this on, and they do it easily. Vanity falls in an instant, but so much sacrifice to Knock. No shield, but does have that ult available. Oh, Psych out on the zip line, sees that danger present and has to play for the subtle edge instead. Such a tight spot that they're in. Up against Temper, the Rolling Thunder, to help them enter. They try to go across the zip line and they can't land all the shots on one. Here comes the full approach. Can Bleed survive longer than 8th place? Noct will fall first. dropped in the 1v3. Audi no shield, but other than that, it's pretty much decided. And so I don't even think Dropped is going to go for this fight. He'll instead, yeah, just hang out on the rocks wherever he can hide out. Oh, what a spot in those few seconds during the Rolling Thunder, procking to get around that building. Temper doesn't spot him, and neither does Weave.
Yeah, there's going to be no cleanup there, really, to speak of for Vanity in terms of where they end up on this leaderboard. We're down to 6 as SSG does fall. And this zone pull is going to just clear out the next half of teams easily on this next close, as there's effectively nothing really to play for. But taking a look at the squads that are near the center, it's two teams that we've mentioned time and time again, most hated in the conversation. Weewoo in the conversation, and now it's going to be up to Weave, and it's going to be up to Furia, who is still in contention here, mind you. Could they get another back-to-back performance? They're going to have to clear out a number of squads here on the southern side. They're already putting on the pressure. All they really have to do is press here, as the teams inside have already started their fighting. No shields left for anyone on the inside, and they're going to take the swing. They're going to take the opportunity to get it done on their own accord. Weave is going to fall. They're going to lose Baxlon, as another swing in from behind is going to put them on the back foot for just a second. Temper is going to fall as well, and it looks like Baxlon might be able to get picked up here. Yes, indeed. They might have been a gold res as well, so they have a little bit of health to work with. Top 4 situation now for Furia, but it seems unlikely they'll make it any further, as Keon, the last one left standing. Double Mozam's just ripping this squad apart. Ava going to fall as well and zipping on out of here. They're going to extend their life in this game, but they did so much work on the way here.
Drops has been watching this the whole time, and now the lone rat in Trips has to head back out directly into Keon's sightline. Impeccably managed by him, but he is a rat as well. So is Dropped. 3 lone members of a team are all that's left for Most Hated to watch, as they just need to claim 1 body to finish off that game and nab themselves a very easy 12 points. I mean, the job was done for them, really.
Yeah, that absolute train crash out right underneath them was exactly what they needed. I think other than the bit of fighting that we saw them do earlier in the game, and of course pressuring that whole engagement that we saw between NRG and Not Moist, they kind of just waited for it, and that's not typical of a team like Most Hated. Most Hated loves to be in that battleground, right? You often see them in the middle of these 3-team scuffles. They kind of just had to sit on their hands and wait for the rest of the squads to sort out who wanted second, and they waited out just long enough to swing on in. And yeah, I think all they had to do was 20 damage to a solo. Beautiful win from Most Hated, slowly creeping up there throughout the day, now putting themselves in a really solid position to be in the conversation for one of our top teams.
Hey, how about Weewoo with 10 kills that game? After swooping in on that 6 stack, and Furia able to just piece together a very impressive game for themselves. That's massive for the standings. NRG as well ended up with 9 kills that round, so that could give them a decent boost from the unfortunate goose egg that they were sitting in for, I think, the first 3 games, if I'm being real. It does affect the standings quite drastically, but obviously after that South Circle suicide that a lot of the teams ended up engaging in, Furia got more placement points again. And they did it once again by just standing in the right spot and then timing a fight beautifully, walking into that 6 stack to complete what they knew would be the best position that they would end up getting, and just nabbing all of the KP, completely profiting off of all of that other work. It was beautifully done, and they will settle for quite the boost in points to potentially guarantee them that first place spot regardless of a Game 6.
And are we even surprised at this point? I think Furia is just a team that we expect to be on the leaderboard in some capacity when we're talking about Storm points. So they're going to continue to make this race as tight as it can be, even when they're not taking wins, which is crazy to say. But yeah, I have to shout out the proactivity from a couple of squads that still got points on the board. NRG swinging down to Falcons. I think we were both watching it thinking, wow, that's a little bit overzealous maybe, but it didn't end up mattering. That opening damage that was almost entirely recovered from by Falcons was not enough to stave them off, and they almost got the clutch up against Not Moist as well. So not quite the game that they were looking for, I am sure, but at least a bit of an improvement in terms of some of the points that they're putting on the board. As we can see here, still well in the trenches though. You see them there in 18th place, while Furia in the meanwhile didn't win the game, but is still big winning in this tournament. 74 points for them. The next closest 18 points away with Not Moist.
And how about Weewoo moving into that top 5 after such a stellar performance? Not only those 10 kills, but again, really great placement for the 3rd or 4th consecutive game in this lobby. They have just been they have possibly been the most consistent team out of these 2 consecutive days. Not counting Furia, I suppose. But even then, placement-wise, Weewoo has been doing the consistently best across both maps. And it's finally starting to show with that 10 kill display they brought in game number 5.
Yeah, I think Falcons is a team that has leapfrogged maybe by 1 position so far. Again, the only way I can really describe their game so far, other than their win, has been a bit lukewarm. They're getting engaged on by teams that are just completely unafraid to take these fights. And I think they're absolutely not being shown any sort of respect. And they're getting beat out in a lot of these scenarios, which is leading them to maybe sag behind a little bit when compared to SSG and Not Moist, as well as, of course, Furia. But still one more game, still one more opportunity for some of these teams to shine. Weewoo, I think, has been sort of our conversation point that I think we're happiest to see, just showing up in a lobby that has some of the most incredible players in the Apex scene internationally. And that's what's beautiful, right? We keep saying it, but it is truly one of the funnest bits of being able to cover the Carnage Cup, is that we get this whole mix of different scenes, different abilities, and different players that when you put them all together, you get a melting pot that is an absolute joy to watch.
Of course, as much as Apex is built on watching your player, I really hope that these events, these games, and the things that Knights put on is a good way for some of you watching Apex to get to know more facets of the community, because it really is so much bigger than you know. And you know, coming into Mannheim, you know that there's not just going to be the people playing in this lobby playing in Germany, but the people playing in this lobby are going to be the ones cheering the hardest at Mannheim as well. They're going to be the ones who care the most about those players and who wants it the most. And yeah, like you said, we love to see the community really coming together in events like this. They will one more time on Storm Point to go for that top 5 again. That is the cutoff to get a piece of that sweet, tender, juicy $10,000 prize pool that we're offering up thanks to Blacklight and Zippo. But obviously, a couple of teams will not be eligible. Obviously, a couple teams are a bit too far away from that top 5. I would say at this point, probably anything under 20 points. So that's DSG, Weave, Temper, Thuggets, Vanity, Energy, Donut, Empire. I'm sorry, guys, but time is kind of up.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any Team Liquid Alienware level adjustments you can make to try and fix up that score. And that's just the reality of having a 6-game set, right? You have to make every single game count, and those 0-point games are going to follow you and track you throughout the entire tournament. So now that we're here, now that the games didn't quite go your way in the early bits, this last opportunity, maybe just to show out, maybe just to show people that you are still one of the teams that deserves to be in this finals lobby. Already proved it yesterday, but feels good to get a win under your belt today. And I think right now the chase really is onto Furia and whether anyone will be able to dethrone Furia in this final game. We'll have to wait and watch as we start to drop into our final game of the day, our final day of the weekend for the Carnage Cup number 7, brought to you by Zippo and Blacklight. Here we go, Tenric.
What an event it's been. What games we've got to have. What strong competitive lobbies. I think it's the funniest thing when players after events like this or like Rising, they'll tweet out and be like, that was the most competitive lobby we've ever been. And it's like ALG who've like won 13 LANs saying that. Something about these events make people care. I don't know what it is, but let's keep it going. With our Storm Point drops that are yet again uncontested, at least to begin. But of course, all eyes at first are on Northpad, where Alliance has been invading Most Hated twice now. Once to no avail because of a third party, second time to no avail because Most Hated is goated sometimes. Will they go for lucky number 3? They're certainly eyeing it.
Yeah, there's a chance we'll see it once again, and I think this just harkens back to how important it is to have control of this side of the map, right? For a while, Northpad was a POI that people love to fight for, love to contest, because it is one of the best ways to establish control in these northernmost zones, especially when we have endings near trenches, near checkpoint. But you have some of that flexibility to play things a little bit slower as well, since you get through those chokes as you're progressing towards the southern side of the map a little bit earlier when teams have already sort of made their way out of the checkpoint and Cedo station areas. So you're not going to struggle quite as much oftentimes to try and make those transitions. And with the way we know teams like Alliance like to play, right, just playing out of thermal on World's Edge for the longest time and playing that slow game where they're taking those fights on the edge against less formidable teams, I think this time around Hate is sort of turning that strategy on its head and back at them to try and pick up this early KP and take out Alliance on their own.
We'll see if they can flip that script once more. They have 2 angles. Hockey's with the 1, and Laser is a little bit overextended here. Caught immediately with the headshot on the Senti, and that's going to be a quick knock from Hockey's. It's an immediate 2v3. The Antlion pounces on his prey. And 2 ants left in the trenches. Looks like one's going to head back to the feet. As they'll have to play slow here. Yeah, Krabi and Dynasty are both just gonna bunker up and see if anybody else chimes in. I don't think that's going to be the case. 5-star do hear it from checkpoint. But I think they're just gonna look at this and see if they can fill in on the squabble. But Alliance is taking this very disciplined. I don't think they're gonna lose enough to call it one. They've even set down the evac tower already to just get out the second they get down. And good thing, because 5-star is in fact moving in. Moving in, speaking of which, to our circle, which is pulling stacks. And, no, not, excuse me, Launchpad and Devastated Coast. World's Edge brain. Sorry, kid. World's Edge is stuck in my head at all corners of the day, unfortunately. But fun circle for sure, as we'll head down to that southeast quadrant where so many teams are already starting to pack in. You see Falcons, Vanity, and Thuggets over in Launchpad, and DSG and Moist continuing their long-winded fight here at Echo HQ.
DSG seems to be holding center right now, but as you mentioned, there is quite a bit of space being taken up by multiple teams here that want this early. You can see Wee there just zipping on by.
Really putting the Wee in.
As this fight really starts to fall apart for Not Moist, who has lost the first member in Guild, which is one of the most critical fraggers to try and win out these 3v3s. Qzier gonna follow up with a knock and a thirst onto Waltzy, and Not Moist once again down, but certainly not out. And I think if we have any notes on the history of what Not Moist has been able to do as solo coming back from the brink of defeat, I think this team might even be thinking about chasing that one down and making sure that it is cleaned up. But
yeah,
we'll have to check back and see if that solo is able to get anything done as we take a look at Go Next. That is starting to set up a bit of a keep out up against Weewu. EMP a touch early. Maxine is going to be able to set up that follow-up pylon and start to put down those fences.
Yeah, very unfortunate, awkward timing that they walked into, getting stuck by Go Next and then immediately getting aggressed by, I believe, NRG on the other side. But they're able to farm themselves a building in circle, and nobody's going to touch them for the foreseeable future for a while. In fact, Timmy is hunted down. DSG does not settle. Oh, in fact, no. Donut Shop actually walked in and found Timmy instead, and now I think they might fight this Geist instead. So, one way or another, Not Moist will have to settle for the 56 points that they allocated in their first 5 games. I do not think they'll be able to hold on to second place, but there's a good chance they'll be able to stick in that top 5. DSG, desperate to have an absolute standout game to get to that top 5 from so far down, but already losing Designful in this half-witted fight against Donut Shop, unfortunately, half-kitted as well. You can't do all too much. And now the fourth party also on the prowl. Weave is looking up behind Donut Shop, seeing if they can sneak a piece.
Yeah, the party is over at Launchpad, but the real action is happening right over here towards Echo HQ, where Weave is also starting to look from the outside in and maybe getting antsy to join the fray. DSG, 1 member light. Donut Shop has maintained their hold. Stomp's getting knocked down a little bit low, but no knock quite yet. And this is extremely awkward now for Donut Shop. They can opt to sit in this building because only really a tip of it is in zone, and they don't want to sit there and take that zone damage, especially with multiple squads sitting on either flank. So making a decision here about who you're going to swing onto or whether you're going to try and make a quick getaway here. Time is running out for them to make that call. Otherwise, these fights are about to get increasingly more sloppy, and their chances of finding a solid game here increasingly decreasing.
Yeah, there is. This is a decent bit of Echo that's still open, actually. I thought there was way less, but there's no way 3 whole teams are going to be able to hold it down. Well, DSG did get the res down, so Designful is back in the fray. And so you do, in fact, have 3 full teams here still. Donut Shop, like you said, the most vulnerable for a moment here, but now everyone seemingly has their position intact. That certainly can't be the case going forward, though, as the circle will pull even further away towards Launchpad. DSG looking for a pot shot to take. Donut Shop will be the first to get the memo, though. They'll start hiding out and heading towards this back corner of the circle, which again will be heavily contested. Weave will actually take the long road and head towards Pylon first before probably snaking around the north side, where a couple other stragglers and edge teams are playing, like Alliance, Bleed, Space Station, and 5-Star.
Oh, and I like this play from Donut Shop. You see them actually zone wrapped and then got the zip line down and across to be just inside this next zone, so they have cover from the southern end. Now DSG kind of hung out to dry. Realistically, they had so much attention from 2 teams and suddenly they just got left alone over at Echo. It looks like they recognize getting this siege onto Donut Shop quite unlikely, and multiple other teams that have already taken up their spots to the south end and just within Launchpad itself. They're going to wrap the other way, so might meet up with Weave halfway once again and have to take that engagement. We'll have to wait and find out if that is indeed the case as we check in with KCP looking down the barrel of their weapons over at 2R1C. Full stack this time around, but I'd gotta say, I think looking a slightly worse for wear in the games today, while KCP had a great set of games yesterday and is also just getting stomped out a little bit by some of our top performing squads.
Yeah, still a ways to go. 9 points behind 5th place in Weewoo at the moment, so a lot of work to do for sure, and they'll have to do it now as 2R1C will make themselves known. They're also looking for a standout game. They're the ones right below KCP in the standings. It's a big fight that KCP knows is worth a lot, and so they will play it slow, wait for the opening on the other door where the ISO'd member is. It's Uchako who goes down first. KCP only losing 2 shields, and now the individual brawls can play out with not too much fear. KCP wipe the floor once one is gone and make short work at 2R1C.
A nice cleanup here, and this is pretty nice for them. They don't have to worry about other teams infringing in zone for quite a while, or rather their chunk of the zone for quite a while. But this next walk-up might be a little bit more contentious. They have the tools to do it. They have that new castle wall to continue to leapfrog their way forward inch by inch and eventually find their way into one of the better spots in the end game if they can continue to fight the way that they're fighting currently. But wait to be decided as we check in once again. DSG not done fighting today. It looks like they're not going to get an easy day to close out the Carnage Cup for themselves. No knocks quite yet. They're going to be able to get off these bats as well as the recovery of the HP from enemies. So a bit of a stalemate for right now as this zone starts to encroach on their space.
Making the same call as Weave. Let's go Pylon. Certainly a lot of room in the circle to roam, but not in the Pylon itself, as Weave will actually take that as a memo to get out themselves and move a little farther forward in a Pylon. Meanwhile, there is Vanity still up top as well. Or 5-Star, excuse me. As they will probably be the first to leave. DSG assessing the area, seeing if there's any stragglers on Weave that they can point out. There are not just yet. Not enough space that is inherently controlled by Disguised to play off of either, so I think they'll just hold on to this low ground and wait for the run out. They do have that pathy zipline, so they can probably just set up for the choke that 5-Star is controlling whenever they want to.
Yeah, and that is going to be, I think, the choke that is going to be the prize possession for whatever team wins out all of the fights that are starting to break out on this side. It's going to be the first one to fall from the looks of it. Enemy almost answering back with a knock of his own, but it's not going to matter. The fire from above is going to clean this one up for Weave, and actually 5-Star nowhere to be seen. It looked like they were going to take a look at this, but they've backed up, only sending Nex on that scouting mission. Going to get out easily. A little bit of damage traded back towards Frex, but this is really important for both of these squads because that next choke that has access to the launchpad, excuse me, is going to be sort of the final safe bastion for teams on this western edge, and there really is room for only one. In fact, there's barely room for one. 5 Star is not going to have a whole lot of cover to work with there on that choke. So I think they're starting to formulate a game plan about whether this fight is what they need to take or whether they can sneak into an endgame spot and avoid this brawl overall, though those kills would feel pretty good in their back pocket. I don't think this is a team that is in striking range of that top 5, but again, we're playing here a little bit for the ego, playing a little bit for showing what you can do. So taking out the squad might just be a little bit of a feels good in the pocket.
Absolutely, 100%. Money first, glory next, gaming is the most important thing above it all. And these guys are gaming. I think 5 Star do take that fight, whether or not we walk up to them. Actually, Go Next is watching both of them at the moment. But yeah, they're going to take that fight. And one will fall. Wow, huge wipe by Weave. But Carter's now the only one standing. Decent trades done by 5 Star so far. It's a 1v1 on the truck. And yeah, just one shot left to deal with Dark. And Weave ultimately win out that battle. A flurry of 1v1s that quickly delved into a full-on pack fight outside, and just better clips from this Weave stack that will now have to deal with Go Next. Ground down a Rolling Thunder first, and probably a little bit of gunfire second onto a Riley that still has not had time to heal. That being said, Go Next do not have all the confidence in the world, as their shields are not necessarily as good, and they do have a little bit of time that they've had to hand over to Weave, but doesn't stop them from proccing that EMP and having the advantage to play off of. There goes Carter first, and from there, Go Next make it a triviality. Weave instantly falls, and we're down to 13 squads.
And it looks like Go Next just liking their chances better at clearing out the side as opposed to holding onto their building, picking up a little bit of KP for themselves. We're going to see if Alliance can do the same here, ticking down the squad that is in front of them. Wow. Nice damage here coming out of that Havoc. Steal, a very formidable weapon in the hands of a formidable player. Beautiful damage is going to clean this one up, and Tyler just popping off for bleed. Go Next. Probably missed this window. They were looking for it a little bit, but they have fully backed on over to the hill, over to relative safety. About a minute left for this to be completely enveloped by this next zone, however. And they're starting to pick out and try and figure out what fight they have to take next, because they have no home to speak of and multiple squads on the outside wanting to take them down.
This is getting cramped quick. Might be a faulty circle call from a couple of these teams. It is pulling drastically south. But that just makes it that much more fun for teams like WeWoo. We're trying desperately to hold on to this 5th place position. It's clear Go Next is gunning for it, and they've already farmed a couple KP to lessen that gap. But looking up for a couple of the other teams that could be on their tail. KCP is still up and kicking, and I believe so is 5 Star or 2R1 or 2R1C, one of those. Oh no! Wow. So we will actually don't have a lot in their immediate way. I think the one team standing in their way is probably Go Next.
Yeah, the problem is where they're going to walk up from here. Yeah. I think there might be a zip line left on the outside, but that's being firmly held out by the likes of NRG. So Go Next also adding to this sort of congestion means that WeWoo's walk-up is not going to be for free, and they've been sitting in the corner of that building for the last, like, 5 minutes at least, which means that they have not progressed their shields at all. They might have a decent amount of heals to work with to get into this endgame, but getting there first is going to be their biggest issue. KCP not going to find their way any further into this final game. They are going to fall. SSG trying to do the same to Falcons, who just is scrapping for a little bit of space, whatever they can find. Nice Dark Veil being placed to give them just a little bit more time to either find the walk-up or find the right angle to engage upon this, and that was just enough time to slow down this team across for them. SSG now in dire straits. They're firing back though, and Imperial Howl is the first one to fall. Answering back onto Koi is Jem Burton. But is that going to be enough? Alliance also in the middle of this smoke, putting on the pressure, adding to the heat. Are they going to be able to get the CEO back up? It looks like that is the case, and Jen Burton just getting shots off for free right now. Absolutely unpunished is Falcons. They did not take out all members of SSG, but at the very least, they find themselves just outside of this top 10. Make that top 10 right now as NRG continues to do some damage over on the western edge and clearing out squads left and right.
Incredible way to reverse the polarity of this entire region of the map, but still a very vulnerable one at that, and Jen Burton is just getting bullied right now. Oh, the knuckle cluster fully clears him out. Zero and Hal trying to hold it down. Still a little bit of time to waste, and Alliance will finally fall in the fight against Thuggets. They were trying to push that forever and ever. SSG trying to hold down that movement for themselves. They still have 3 standing as well at this point, and they will actually win their fight against Empire as well. And so all roads will lead back to SSG versus Falcons, as both teams, beaten and battered before, now stand tall against each other, potentially on the ring, starting to come in with very little in either of their way. A rat from Vanity, the closest opponent for Falcons, and a spiced up Thuggets for sure, the closest enemies to Falcons. But it's easy to know who the most valuable threat is to either of these teams as they walk along, trying to gun for that higher part of the pedestal, that bigger chunk of change. There's a massive fall off in the prize pool between second and third, and these teams know that well. SSG is the one getting walled out first. It's Falcons to put on the pressure at first, but also Vanity's Albra Laley doing a little bit of chip, seeing if he can farm away a KP in the kerfuffle. Falcons playing so patiently, so gently with this until they're able to go balls to the wall. And with the help of the smoke, they'll be able to start pushing this forward. A straggler from Go Next, or from SSG rather, means that Falcons gain early advantage up top, but they'll still have to fight a literally uphill battle. It's tough with so much in their way, and Vanity also having to get cleared in the meantime. Falcons are getting distracted. Falcons are multitasking, but Falcons are still getting points, still winning. Jen Burton, the last one standing, having a shield dance, and now Cloak, with the help of his crypto drone into the EMP, is doing everything he can to just stay alive against all corners of the globe pointing at him. One member of NRG, one member of Thuggets, two members of Thuggets, and 2 members of NRG paying attention to him. Now it's just Zainu ratting it out here for SSG against these fully kitted squads, trying to play for that second place position, and might be able to do it if Thuggets and NRG get in each other's way first. 2 teams that were in the bottom of the pack probably can't get up to the top 5 here, but will try and get at least decently close. Zainu with the opening push, trying to take on 2 at once, now make it 3, and almost at least gets 1 down, but NRG now just stand a little bit weaker, but with enough space and electric fences up that they can hold it down and play a little bit of a waiting game with recovery before actually fighting Thuggets. It'll be a shield swap on both ends, so both sides are fully kitted, and Thuggets will now start to aggress. The final fight of the Carnage Cup begins here and now, with a smoke on top of the hill and the off angle from Trepstacks to try and start breaking down shields. Fun FPS doing the very same thing on the outskirts of his own, but NRG is playing a little more packed in. Thuggets trying to control space rather than the fight first, and it could lead to the long-term win holding down that high ground. But Nocturnal, here's the wide swing, trying to catch out Dan. NRG still playing in the pack fight, still playing all together. They find the drone for the early assessment, and now they can take on the fight, but a lot of damage done in the process. Reptar is close to gone, and Thuggets know it. Here's the aggression. Dan onto one first. It's Knock next. Fun standing alone against the entirety of Thuggets, trying to get it all done on his own, and again doing a decent job, a very decent job indeed, to the point where Dan's the only one standing. But that is all Thuggets need to take at least 1 game away from the Carnage Cup. It may not net them money, but it nets them glory.
Yeah, the final 2 teams there really trying to close things out from the deepest of trenches of the leaderboard, but still gotta feel good. Gotta feel great to finally have your game plan convert. We definitely criticized Thuggets a little bit for the fact that they were finding themselves in those decent mid-game positions and not converting whatsoever here. Finally getting it done against one of the top long-standing teams in North America. So hey, listen, if you're going to be tuning into any sort of challenger circuit or LCQ and you weren't before, this is what's so exciting about these lobbies. This is what's so exciting about the up-and-coming players. When they show up, when they have a great game, they can take down the best of the best.
And the best of the best they certainly were. I mean, again, all the top teams getting swept in by that circle. Poor Falcons and SSG locked in a heated debate that kept getting interrupted by a lot of other teams that also were doing extremely well. We saw a lot of peaks in that lobby for sure, and they all got to just brawl until there was just about nothing standing. Just absolute chaos, and I wonder what it does to the point pool. Thuggets, I will say now, do not make it to top 5. They get decently close with that 12-point booster seat, but they will not be able to make it to that top 5, nor does NRG. But I believe the top 5 was still in contention. Go Next was pretty close to Weewoo, I think 7 points behind, and they were starting to farm KP. I think Weewoo did also go down a little bit earlier, so I'm not sure what that turned out to be. But I think Furia did win. I will say that. I think Furia won.
Yeah, the most likely scenario here is that Furia did take it down. A little bit absent in that last game, but certainly not absent from any of the games throughout the day so far and throughout the weekend. One of the top performing teams, the top performing team on the day where it mattered the most as well, playing for those $10,000 that are going to feel great if you're in that top 5. Going to be sad to see leave if you're not. But as we wait for the scores, it looks like it was actually a really close race right at the end there. It's not just about that first place, of course. Paying out the top 5 means that there was a little bit of a scrap there at the bottom of that top 5. We'll have to wait. I think, yeah, it's likely to go to a tiebreaker if what I'm seeing is correct.
I think so.
So we'll hear word on that shortly from, again, a couple of teams that were, I think, not highlighted nearly enough, maybe on day 1, but certainly coming into their own in game 2 and giving us a show. That's for damn sure. Definitely not missing a step in terms of keeping us entertained and showing us some damn good Apex.
Yeah, what a show it was. A progenitor to what will be Mannheim, in fact. Most of these teams making it there. Most of these teams having a good time there as well. And most of the teams that are going there making the top of the leaderboard. It is indeed Furia winning, and it is indeed a tie for 5th place. Weewoo and Go Next at a cool 40 points apiece. So it does go to tiebreaker. And so
it does sound like we're getting word. It is actually going to be Go Next off of the tiebreaker points. So that's tough, but I mean, just goes to show how tight that race was. Even Thuggets, who just, again, a little bit late to the punch on their big win there. So close. Just 3 points off as well. So incredibly impressive sort of top end of the pack here. Does not discount any of the fantastic games put on by Weewoo. Falcons going to be in that 4th position with 51 points. Not Moist in 3rd. SSG in 2nd. And Furia are champions of the 7th Carnage Cup. Beautiful stuff here. I think no surprise to see these teams at the top of the leaderboard with how they played today.
Yeah, got to give a shout out to these other teams that didn't make it into the top 5, of course, some teams that put on stellar performances in their own right. Alliance had one hell of a day 1. Obviously, Bleed was one of the most interesting teams to watch. They had some real show-out games and then some real standout stinkers. NRG could say the very same thing. And then how about these T2 teams that really popped out today? I mean, Donut Shop, Temper, Weave, Empire as well. Like, every single team really had a lot to offer both yesterday and today, and I'm so glad that that everyone really tried their hardest the whole way through. Love to see that. Love to see the love that these players have shown. But yeah, like you said, congratulations to Furia. Congratulations to our top 5 teams, especially for taking home a piece of that 10K prize pool.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Stellar showing from these teams that we don't get to see in these top caliber lobbies all too often. Just showing why they could soon be contenders. They might not be at Mannheim this time around, but you could see them the next land coming near you. But Tenrek, that's going to be it from us. That's going to be it for Carnage Cup number 7. Again, what a treat, what an honor to be here, to be joined by everyone watching, by all these fantastic teams, all 40. Reminder, this is day 2, and we already got to witness a number of teams trying their hardest, not quite making it, but still putting on quite a show and quite an effort. So thanks to the teams, thanks to everyone watching, thanks, of course, to our wonderful production. Can't shout them out enough. And thanks again to our sponsors, the sponsors of the Carnage Cup, Zippo and Blacklight. Again, Tenrek and I keep you know, soft bragging a little bit about just how fantastic these chairs are. So if you want to get one of your own, definitely check out the links on pks.gg/blacklight to get one of your own, maybe a different chair, maybe even a desk if you're feeling spicy. Thanks again to Zippo and to Blacklight for bringing us this amazing event. But Tenric, closing thoughts, anything you want to say before we head on out of here?
Nah, man, you covered every single base. You could have closed it out yourself, man. I feel bad that you're handing it to me, but I will gladly take it out. We appreciate you all coming here once, and we hope to see you here again. Knightsarena is not done with Apex or anything close to it. For Mannheim and beyond, we'll see you later. Take care.